Han Li leaned against the side of the carriage, sitting across from the four women. He was able to clearly see their unease. He already swept his gaze past the grasslands outside the carriage several times, but he found nothing out of the ordinary. It appeared similar to any ordinary grassland. Han Li felt somewhat baffled, but he showed none of this on his face, nor did he say anything. After all, he didn't wish to reveal his lack of understanding of the spirit realm as it could arouse suspicion. But during these days, the four women treated him with a much friendlier attitude. From his act of saving Quanner, the red-robed woman, they began to enthusiastically call him Big Brother Han. Han Li didn't find the name suitable, but because the women were so young, he found it difficult to be too cold with them. During this time, he spoke much with the girl Quanner in particular. Instead of making brazen inquiries about the spirit realm, he asked many questions about the Heavenly East Enterprise. During these discussions, he came to know that the mistress she mentioned was a regional manager of several cities in the Heavenly East Enterprise and the daughter-in-law of the head of the organization. Normally, one would address her as Mistress Fang. The Heavenly East Enterprise's master had 3 sons. The mistress was officially wed to his second son. They were rather affectionate of one another, but due to an unfortunate accident, her husband died over 20 years ago, but he was survived by 2 young children, a boy and a girl. As such, what should have been governed by the couple was now left entirely by the widow. As for the 4 in the carriage, they were the mistress' personal servants that she adopted from a young age. As a result, the 4 held an extremely deep admiration of the mistress. As for their journey to the remote and Yuan City, Lady Fang came here partially for the big business in the city, but it was mostly for her son. Since they found spirit roots in her son at a young age, he joined a cultivation sect located in Yuan City. They had sent a message hinting that there was a matter that required Mistress Fang's assistance. As Mistress Fang still kept her son close in her heart, she made the journey personally and even abandoned that caravan she was traveling with to hurry on her way to the city. In her eyes, with the number of men in the caravan and the few cultivators escorting them, nothing significant could happen to them. She couldn't have expected a horde of low-grade demon worms and a demon serpent to attack the caravan in the azure sifting desert. When Han Li heard this, he began to make indirect inquiries about the master of the Heavenly East Enterprise. After all, founding such a large organization wasn't something an ordinary person could do. Han Li was stunned by what he found out. The master of the organization was a mortal who lacked physical strength, nor did he have any spirit roots. How was such a mortal able to create such a large business? As doubts filled Han Li's mind, Han Li asked an indirect question about it, but as careless as the red-robed woman was, she didn't give a proper answer. When he saw this, he didn't question her any further and promptly changed topics. As this went on, Han Li managed to understand a few things, but he had even more questions as well, leaving him somewhat gloomy. Although the grasslands appeared to be far more expansive desert, the caravan quickly passed through it in a little over a month, but it still hadn't reached the end. During this time, the guards and cavalry remained highly vigilant and fearful. Even the several cultivators that hadn't emerged during the desert would periodically take turns patrolling the air above the caravan. These Gulu Mountain cultivators also appeared to be treating this duty with great care. Although these people appeared ready to face a great enemy, the caravan managed to leave the grasslands after another half-month of travel and emerged into a hilly area. The soldiers and cultivators instantly felt relief after leaving the grasslands, and the caravan's original banter immediately returned. Letter 1D4EF, letter 1D667, letter 1D4E, letter 1D4E, letter 1D498, letter 1D4E, letter 1D486, letter 1D4EC, letter 1D4F8, letter 1D4AT. Even the young women in Han Li's carriage let out a sigh of relief after leaving the grasslands. The young green-robed woman patted her chest in relief and sweetly smiled. So we didn't attract the wolves of the plains. Although that wasn't my first time through them, I still feared for my life. Lior sighed and fearfully said, not only was elder sister Xianxia scared, but the entire caravan was holding their breaths. If our luck was any worse, we could have woken a beast tide and that would be the end of us. The plains are truly a death trap. Although it is rarely seen, there are a few merchant enterprises that encounter it. Quanner tilted her head and added, that's right. I heard that in Yuan City didn't hesitate to spend a fortune to our enterprise for over 100 rare spirit tools and a huge number of weapons to deal with a beast tide. The white-robed woman bafflingly said, strangely enough, the city isn't large and it wasn't recently built. How could it place an order for so much equipment? That many spirit tools is something only a mid-sized city would be willing to spend. The blue-robed woman shook her head and lightly said, "It doesn't come as a surprise. Even if a group of powerful beasts didn't migrate near them recently, the city encounters a massive beast wave every 1,000 years. Against a massive joint attack of so many beasts, they wouldn't be able to easily block it." "That's right, Lior's words are reasonable." Quaner pursed her lips in a smile. Han Li sat in his seat and meditated, but when he heard their conversation about the beast tide, his face began to stir. He recalled what the large scarred man Zhang Qiu mentioned in the azure-sifting desert, a scorpion wave. Could these two things be somehow related? But after that, the women dropped the topic and quickly spoke about other things. Although Han Li felt curious, he continued to circulate the Varja arts and slowly mend his meridians. With that time to mend and the additional undying effects of the wood birth bead, his meridians recovered at a pace far quicker than he anticipated. As of current, his body was in mostly good health. With another month, there shouldn't be a problem at all. As such, with the fourth layer of the Vajra arts cultivated, he suspected that he would be able to win over late Foundation establishment cultivators, given his understanding of mid- and low-grade magic techniques. As for core formation cultivators, he would only find out after he's given it a try. Of course, this was assuming that the abilities of low-grade cultivators in the spirit realm were the same as those in the mortal realm. After they left the plane, the caravan arrived at its destination after 2 days, a stone city with an unordinary presence. Looking at it from a distance, one could tell that the stone walls were over 100 meters tall with a 30-meter-tall stone tower placed every 300-meter interval on the wall. It appeared quite imposing. There were also delicate designs carved onto the walls as if they were unfamiliar talisman characters, adding another layer of mystery to the city. Han Li was speechless at the sight of it. The city wasn't comparable to any small city. In the mortal realm, it could be said to be a massive city. But then, Han Li took notice of a few large armored soldiers patrolling the walls. There were also ballistas placed on top of the towers with giant metal arrows ready to fire. Each arrow was over 10 meters long and shined with white light, as if they were each low-grade magic tools. Such astonishing weapons would likely be able to kill even fellow Taoist cultivators. Han Li narrowed his eyes at the sight and began to ponder as the caravan arrived at the city gates. There was not the person outside the city gates. They were pitch black and sealed tight. There was a large troop of soldiers on top of the gates, though, looking down at the caravan with cautious expressions. The scarred man Zhang Qiu rode his wolf up to the gate and wordlessly tossed an item in his hand up to the gate. It was a golden medallion. The soldiers stirred up on the gate as a middle-aged man in silver armor closely examined it. Afterwards, he took a look at the caravan and commanded, "Open the gates and inspect the caravan. They belong with the Heavenly East Enterprise." Once that was said, the soldiers began to shout with a few of them running down to open the gate. A short moment later, the metal gates slowly opened to reveal tens of fully armed soldiers running out in formation. The silver-armored middle-aged man was the last to arrive. He walked up to Zhang Gui and vigilantly looked him. "Are you their leader?" Zhang Qiu calmly answered, "I am Zhang Qiu. You should have received the city lord's token. We carry the goods that were ordered by the city." "I've received the order, but it is a peculiar time. We'll need to have a few of our esteemed cultivators to examine your caravan before we can let you in." Zhang Qiu readily agreed to their request. "So you fear demon beasts sneak among us. We'll comply with your search, of course." The middle-aged man nodded and turned out, calling out in the direction of the city, "Good. Mr. Li, Master Huang, please inspect them." A calm man's voice spoke from the city gate. "By command of the city lord, we will assist Officer Zhao. We will naturally offer our services." A white-robed Confucian scholar and a monk of azure Buddhist robes walked out from the city gate. The voice belonged to the scholar. Officer Zhao didn't dare to neglect the cultivators and hurriedly thanked them with a smile. The scholar took out a mirror while the monk took out an alms bowl. After a brief chant and incantation gesture, they tossed the magic tools into the air. Suddenly, the magic tools began to circle in the air. The lens spouted out an azure mist, covering an entire tortoise. As for the alms bowl, it released a yellow light and began to sweep past the wolf cavalryman. In a short span of time, the light from both the magic tools quickly swept through the entire caravan, thoroughly scanning each person present. In the blink of an eye, The 30 carriages and 200 people were inspected without a problem found. Good, you can all enter the city. Ah yes, I must tell you something. Mistress Fang has already made a contract with the largest inn in the eastern city, the Cloud Ease Inn. You may head there after you deliver your goods. Officer Zhao's expression relaxed and he didn't make matters more difficult. After having his say, he waved his hand and signaled them to enter. Zhang Qiu saluted him before leading the caravan into the city. After passing through the gates, Han Li discovered that the city was far larger than he expected. At a glance, the city had an innumerable amount of buildings. He couldn't see the end of them. In addition, the city was well planned when it was constructed. Although the buildings were of different styles and materials used to build them were highly varied, they were evenly arranged with 10-meter-wide stone roads lined between them. Such a large city was naturally bustling with excitement. The streets were filled with people where it was nearly overcrowded. Han Li was stunned at the scene, but he soon discovered most of the people on the streets carried a weapon on them and wore heavy expressions. When the blue-robed woman in the carriage saw this, she sighed and muttered, "It seems the matter about the beast wave is true. Otherwise, the villagers outside wouldn't have all rushed into the city. There is a large pressure on a Yuan city." When Han Li heard this, he came to a sudden realization. With so many people, it would be difficult for the caravan's tortoises to make it through. Fortunately, Officer Zhao had already considered the matter and sent several soldiers to clear a path for them. They forcibly dispersed the crowd to make way. Even so, the tortoise carriages moved slowly. After traveling for almost 2 hours, they eventually made their way past 10 streets and arrived at a street with rarely few people, stopping in front of a decorated archway that was several stories tall. Behind the archway were several heavily guarded storehouses, with many armed attendants standing nearby. The following process went exceedingly smooth. The Heavenly East Enterprise handed over their goods to the storehouse officials for inspection. Afterwards, Zhang Qiu received a certificate from them and led the caravan to the west side of the city. Now having restored his ability to move, Han Li made a sudden proposal to Zhang Qiu when they were halfway to the inn. He wanted to explore the city for a bit before meeting back with them. When Zhang Qiu heard this, he frowned. Then after some thought he agreed and said, "Junior Marshal Brother Han, you've yet to meet the mistress and have yet to officially enter the organization. I won't restrict you much, but you should take note that many shady characters are now present in Yuan City. It isn't very safe, and there can't be much worth seeing in this small, remote city. If you have matters to attend to, I hope you'll return to the inn quickly when you're done." Zhang Qiu may have a fierce appearance, but he spoke with tactful words. Han Li smiled and agreed. Then he nimbly left them, turning a street corner and disappearing from sight. Zhang Qiu looked in the direction that Han Li disappeared and stroked his chin, wearing a pensive expression. "What, does benefactor Zhang think that Brother Han won't return?" Standing at his side, Nan Kizi asked him with a smile. Zhang Qiu wryly laughed and said, "I'm not worried about that, he already signed the blood curse contract. It's only that Junior Marshal Brother Han seems to be a person with a deep history. He's rather mysterious." Nan Kizi smiled and added, "He is so young, yet he was able to cultivate such an astonishing body refinement technique. It is impossible that he came from humble origins, and from his bearing, it is obvious he isn't from the heavenly origin region like us." "Oh, I know that as well. But so long as he doesn't have a relationship with any of the other great powers in the heavenly origin region, our Heavenly East Enterprise won't interfere even if he had a problematic history. If we properly nurture this person, it is possible for him to cultivate the 5th layer of the Vajra arts. In that case, he will certainly turn into Mistress Fang's strongest soldier." Zhang Qiu's expression turned heavy. Nan Kizi glanced at the scarred man with a mysterious smile. "The 5th layer of the Vajra arts. If benefactor Zhang truly thinks that, he will in existence on even grounds with core formation cultivators." Zhang Qiu chuckled. "I'm holding my hopes rather high. From how young he is and his current cultivation, the possibility of cultivating to the 5th layer of the Vajra art still exists. With some luck, he will far exceed common body refiners like me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been so eager to have him sign a blood curse contract in the Azure Sifting Desert." "That's reasonable. All right, enough of that person. The goods have been delivered. That means that Mistress Fang's contract with me and my martial brothers have been fulfilled. We will now take our leave." Nan Kizi bowed to them and uttered a few words of farewell. "Oh, you won't visit the mistress again. In that case, I hope your travels go well." Failing to keep them any longer, Zhang Qiu bid them a respectful farewell. The Gulu Mountain cultivators promptly left. A soldier to the side looked at the departing cultivators and sadly said, "It is truly a pity. If our enterprise was able to have our own cultivators, it would be great." The scarred man sighed, "It is wishful thinking to have our own cultivators. Although our Heavenly East Enterprise is one of the three great merchant unions in the Heavenly Origin region, we still struggle to acquire spirit stones every year. It isn't enough to hire cultivators all year round, and chi condensation cultivators possess about the same strength as body refiners like us. There isn't much use in employing them. Foundation establishment cultivators use an astonishing number of spirit stones year-round as well. It is only when our enterprise has a large order that they are willing to spend spirit stones on them. As for core formation cultivators and above, that is something that we can't even consider. High-grade cultivators require rare materials or magic tools that are far beyond what we can afford. Even if our enterprise manages to somehow foster a mid-grade cultivator, they will eventually leave. That is so. Even body refiners like us will immediately depart to dangerous areas when they finish their cultivation, in search of rare medicines that can create spirit roots. After all, when one becomes a cultivator, not only can they cultivate immortal techniques, but their lifespan increases as well. Over the years, it is impossible to know how many funerals we've held for body refiners, yet they still journey outside. The soldier sadly sighed. Xianxia then waved his arm, "Enough of that. This has nothing to do with ordinary people like us. Let us return to see the mistress." The soldier immediately shut his mouth. Letter 1D557, letter 1D42B, letter 1D41E, letter 1D556, letter 1D568, letter 1D41E, letter 1D41C, letter 1D5FC, letter 1D696. Thus, the party immediately set off, quickly immersing themselves in the busy streets. At that moment, Han Li was standing on a street, looking at the 7 blazing suns in the sky and letting out a gloomy sigh. Ever since he left the azure sifting sands and entered the grasslands, he immediately sensed the astonishing spiritual qi in the air. The spiritual qi in this world was several times greater than what he found in the mortal world. If he was able to find a suitable place of cultivation, it was possible that the spiritual qi could be over a dozen times greater. It is a pity that he already dissipated his nascent soul. The Ice Phoenix's restriction is still present on his body, so he wasn't able to absorb any spiritual qi, leaving him helpless in this regard. He then set his sights on the road and looked around him as he walked forward. The stores on the streets were about the same as he would find in the mortal world, with nothing out of the ordinary. But suddenly he stopped and looked at a store in front of him. After some hesitation, he entered and looked around. There were tables made of sandalwood that shined with the cold light glinting off the weapons they displayed. This was a store that specialized in weapons. It wasn't very large, only having 2 attendants, but there were many customers that visited this store to begin with. Naturally, the 2 were mortals. When Han Li entered, he saw that despite the store's unremarkable exterior, business was treating them quite well, and his heart stirred. When one of the attendants was finished dealing with another guest, he took notice of Han Li and hastily rushed over to him with a smile. "Customer, do you see something you like? Take a look at this gold-plated 9-ring saber. It was forged from black iron. Not only can it cut through metal, but it is rather heavy. It is an ideal weapon for dealing with wolves." The attendant noticed Han Li was eyeing a large ringed saber. It was pitch black and appeared remarkably heavy. "I don't have much strength. How could I use such a heavy weapon?" Han Li withdrew his gaze and shook his head. "Then how about this crescent sword? It is refined from pure copper. Not only is it light, but it is also quite durable. It is a rare, high-quality, flexible sword." "It is too short for me. It'd be inconvenient to use." Han Li rejected it at a glance. "Too short?" The shop attendant's smile froze as if he wasn't sure how to reply. Han Li took several steps to the side and pointed to an item on the table. "What is that over there? That looks interesting." The item he pointed at was a soft pitch-black rope that was as thick as a thumb. When the attendant saw this, he hurriedly explained, "That is the young dragon rope. It is refined from metal threads and is specialized for binding. It can trap low-grade demon beasts of extraordinary strength with ease." "Let me take a look at it." Han Li took the item into his hand and shook it. Whoosh! The black rope turned into a perfectly straight stick. When the attendant saw this, his eyes widened. He attended to countless customers for this weapon shop, so he did possess some judgment. Those who can control rope to that degree can't be ordinary. As he determined Han Li was most likely a body refiner, he couldn't help but wear an expression of respect. Han Li waved it a few more times and frowned. "This is quite good, but it is still a bit too thick. Do you have anything thinner? The attendant muttered to himself for a moment before answering with an embarrassed expression. Something thinner. I'm afraid this store doesn't have anything like that. Then a rough voice suddenly spoke from behind him. Oh, you want something thinner? I have something like that. I can let you take a look, but the price won't be cheap. Han Li's expression stirred and he slowly turned around. There were two large men in leather robes standing behind them. One of them had a lofty stature and hair that reached down from his shoulders, giving him a dangerous aura. The other had a sickly complexion and had shriveled skin. The larger man carried a long spear on his back and a huge bag as well. The shriveled man carried a meter-long wooden box in his hand and wore a mysterious expression. Han Li's face lit up when he saw that the two wore rings embedded with spirit stones, but these rings were much cruder than Zhang Qiu's, and their spirit stones were somewhat smaller as well. There were body refiners with spirit tools. Letter 1D68F, letter 1D5FF, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D41E, letter 1D6A0, letter 1D556, letter 1D68C, letter 1D5FC, letter 1D5FA. Having recognized who these people were, Han Li faintly smiled and said, "So long as the item is suitable, the price will be no matter." The shriveled man gave Han Li a probing glance and smiled. "Good, but let's not talk here. Please follow me to a quiet place and we'll continue there." "That will be no problem," Han Li said with a nod. He then followed the two out of the shop. The two appeared quite familiar with the area, and soon arrived at an unremarkable alleyway after a few turns. There was no one there, and it was completely silent. When the three stopped, "This place will be fine. Little brother Zin, take out the item for him to see." "Of course, big brother Bao." The large man readily agreed and grabbed the bag from his back, giving a big shake. Clang sounded out as a large pile of items formed on the ground. There was an assortment of items from bottles to beast hides and horns. The shriveled man bent down and took a palm-sized wood box into his hand. "Take a look at this. This is an earthworm tendon that we acquired after killing it with a few other body refiners. Not only is it thin, but it is also incredibly durable and fully flexible. It is rather easy to withdraw and extend." An earthworm. Han Li didn't know what kind of demon beast this earthworm was, but it appeared to be a kind of low-grade demon beast. However, he didn't reveal his confusion on his face when he opened the box. He saw a thin yellow object tightly wrapped into a ball by a red rope. Han Li bluntly tugged at the red rope and tore it to pieces. With a pop, the ball of beast tendons flung out and shot at Han Li's face. Han Li raised his hand, but it appeared he was too slow. Nevertheless, he managed to grab an end of the tendons with his fingers and instantly turned it soft and limp with a twist of his fingers. Then Han Li brought it before his eyes and noticed it was 6 meters long. When the shriveled man saw Han Li's swift actions, he couldn't help but exchange a glance with the large man. At that moment, Han Li was giving the worm tendon a thorough examination. Having killed a myriad of low-grade demon beasts in the past, he was able to tell the characteristics of the tendon at a glance, as well as how it could be used. He fiddled with it a moment longer before shaking it with a single hand. The tendon blurred as it twisted and danced through the air. Then, it coiled around his arm to form a faint yellow bracelet. With that, he rolled his sleeve over it where it was well concealed. Han Li looked at the two and said, "It isn't bad. It truly is a rare material from a low-grade demon beast. Although this item isn't very useful to cultivators and is most suitably used as a bowstring, it is quite useful towards me. So long as you aren't too greedy, I'll agree to your price." The shriveled man's harsh face broke out in a smile and he chuckled. "It appears you really are a body refiner. In that case, we'll settle the bill with spirit stones. I want 30 spirit stones for that tendon." 30 spirit stones. That's a bit high, but I'll pay it, take it. From his conversation with Lier and the others, he learned that although gold and silver were still used as currency by mortals in the mortal realm, body refiners used spirit stones for notable transactions, as they used large numbers of spirit stones in their spirit tools. However, the low-grade spirit stones in the spirit realm weren't nearly as large as those in the mortal realm. Regardless of what the spirit stones were used for, mid- and high-grade spirit stones were treated with the most importance. After all, top-grade spirit stone veins were possible in this world due to the greater density of spiritual qi, but most of them belonged to a few high-grade cultivators and superpowers. Even so, 30 low-grade spirit stones was still a bit much for a minor material from a low-grade demon beast. On the day Han Li hid all of his storage pouches and treasures in the desert, he hadn't forgotten the significance of spirit stones in the spirit realm. For the sake of carefulness, he left behind a dozen mid-grade spirit stones on his body just in case. Now he reached into his robes and tossed a yellow spirit stone over to him. The long-haired man took a step forward and caught it. After he looked at it, he nodded with satisfaction. When the shriveled man saw this, he smiled and took out a small leather pouch. He poured out 70 spirit stones from it and used a beast hide on the ground to wrap them up before tossing it to Han Li. The shriveled man chuckled and said, "Here is your change. Since you are so straightforward, how about we join together if there is a chance? Perhaps there may be an opportunity in the future, but I am preoccupied for the time being, so I must take my leave." Han Li saluted the two with a smile and calmly walked away. When Han Li departed from the alley, the large man looked at the mid-grade spirit stone in his hand and took another look at the alley entrance. An ominous glint flashed from his eye and he softly said, "Big brother Bao, his face is unfamiliar and he is quite wealthy. Should we?" The shriveled man's face sank and he said, "Don't think about it. Didn't you see he wasn't wearing any spirit tools? Body refiners who do this are either too poor or they feel their cultivation is too high for normal spirit tools to be of assistance. Which one do you think he belongs to?" The large man hesitated and doubtfully said, "This man can't be poor since he was able to take out a mid-grade spirit stone, but why did he buy that worm tendon from us?" The man surnamed Bao was silent for a moment before letting out a cold laugh. "Brother Zin, are you certain he bought the tendon to be used as a weapon? He might have bought it as material to create a particular spirit tool. Currently, and Yuan City is overflowing with body refiners from the outside. There is no lack of those possessing fearsome talent. Although we aren't weak ourselves, it's best that we don't risk it. After all, we only have one life." The shriveled man's words seemed to calm down the large man surnamed Zin, but soon he wore an embarrassed expression and said, "Big brother's words are reasonable. I am being too greedy for spirit stones, but in the upcoming beast tide, if we don't have low and mid-grade spirit stones to replenish our spirit tools, we'll be put in danger." Having already thought of the matter, the shriveled man said, "What are you afraid of? The city lord will surely employ all the body refiners in the city to deal with the beast wave. They'll give us a sum of spirit stones, of course. So long as we save enough, we'll be able to preserve our lives." When the large man heard this, his spirits were roused. "That's right. According to the agreement between the 3 sovereigns and the 7 demon kings, cultivators at the core formation stage and above aren't allowed to assist large cities in blocking beast waves. If they wish to protect the city, who else do they have to rely on aside from us?" The shriveled man sighed. "So long as you know. In truth, the agreement also stated that the beast wave can't have any demon beasts higher than grade 5 as well. It is hard to say who has more to gain from the agreement." The large man then remained silent in thought. Not long after, the two put away the items on the ground and walked back to the main street, where they disappeared into a sea of people. When Han Li departed from the alley, he continued his stroll. Not long after, Han Li eventually discovered his main objective for departing from the Heavenly East Enterprise, a store that specialized in selling records. Han Li walked into it without batting an eye. The bookstore was on the larger side and was abundant with books, covering topics ranging from astronomy to miscellaneous topics. But since it was a bookstore for mortals, it didn't contain any Jade slips or records of cultivation. Han Li only had eyes on the records that were useful to him, particularly those covering the customs and circumstances in the spirit realm. It is only with this that he'll be able to take his first step into understanding the spirit realm. He bluntly scooped up several books and picked out a map of the nearby surroundings. As Han Li didn't have any gold or silver on him, he could only pay using a low-grade spirit stone. The store owner was overjoyed by this and hurried back to give him his change in silver. With the books in hand, he sought out a restaurant and sat in an unremarkable corner. After ordering a few common dishes, he began to look through the books. Although Han Li's spiritual sense wasn't able to leave his body, he still possessed his amazing memory. Despite how impressively thick a few of the books were, Han Li calmly flipped through them at astonishing speeds and imprinted each and every word in his mind. During this time, his face remained unfazed, but he continued to turn through the books with an understanding of everything he read. Let alone anything else, merely the detailed descriptions relating to the spirit realm circumstances left him shocked. The heavenly origin region that the Heavenly East Enterprise mentioned was actually one of the human territories ruled by one of the 3 human sovereigns, the Heavenly Origin Sage. The other territories that were occupied by humans are the North Sky Hegemon's Black Tortoise Mirror and Emperor Heaven Wonder's Heavenly Spirit region. These two sovereigns were respectively known as the Hegemon and Spirit Emperor. The human body refiners originated from the Heavenly Origin Sage and later founded the Confucian school as well, earning him the name of the Scholar Emperor. He ruled over the Heavenly Origin region and had the social customs that were most similar to Han Li's mortal realm. This was quite fortunate for him. The three human clans occupied a vast region, containing anywhere from several hundred settlements to over 1,000. According to the book, a city of 100 million people was considered a small city in the spirit realm. Other large cities far exceeded the land and scope of a Yuan city. Heavenly Origin City, in particular, where the Heavenly Origin Sage resides, was nearly the size of a small country. However, Heavenly Origin City was also the most ordinary of the three human capital cities. The Hegemon's Black Tortoise City was constructed on the back of a tremendous huge tortoise known as Kenling. It was a huge city that could slowly move through the sea, and the Spirit Emperor's Heavenly Spirit City was even more miraculous. It was built on a tree over 50 kilometers wide. It was said to be able to reach the immortal realm. When Han Li read this, he was shocked as one could imagine, but what amazed him even more was what he read next. According to the record's introduction, in addition to the region of the three sovereigns, there were also the neighboring lands of the 7 demon kings. The demon clan and the human clans could be said to have a half-friendly, half-hostile relationship. The reason why this was the case was that the area the 3 human sovereigns and the 7 demon kings ruled over was only a small drop the sea known as the spirit realm. The land outside their domain was ruled by the clans of other creatures. Most of these creatures were indigenous to the spirit realm. There were also countless types ranging from savage ancient beasts to giants and even pseudo-humans. In addition, there were also other creatures that arrived at the spirit realm by ripping open spatial tears. Although there aren't many of these clans, they were a powerful force that was hostile towards humans and demons alike. They also possessed their own unique abilities, allowing them to rival humans and demons in power. In addition to this, there were also many powerful individuals in the spirit realm, as one might expect. There were the mythical beasts of legends, fearsome existences like true dragons that could ignore the laws of the world. Although many vastly powerful characters emerged from the demons and humans, they were only capable of having a standing in the spirit realm. Although humans and demons viewed each other with hostility normally, when they faced an even larger threat, they had no choice but to cooperate. This led to an official founding of the lands they controlled. In the past, many extraordinary individuals emerged from the human and demon clans, joining together to erect an exceedingly large spell formation, covering the territories of the humans and the demons. It is said the spell formation is profoundly powerful and was passed down from the immortal realm. It was said to target extremely powerful members of the foreign creatures. The more powerful they were, the more they were restricted by the formation, rendering them unable to enter the areas affected by the spell formation. However, the formation also wouldn't have any effect on low and mid-grade demon beasts. This immense spell formation had over 10 formation cores spread throughout the regions of humans and demons. The book hadn't mentioned where the formation cores in the demon territories were located, but it did mention how they were located at the 3 human capitals. Unless they were all destroyed, the spell formation protecting the humans would remain. Considering how important the formation cores were, they must surely be placed in important areas of the demon territories as well. If a powerful foreign creature wished to invade the territories of humans and demons, they would have to face the combined power of the 10 powerful formation cores. By relying on this powerful immortal formation, the human and demon clans were able to prosper and hold a place in the spirit realm. As for the other areas in the vast realm, humans had never delved too deeply into the world. There were only descriptions of how there were countless lands and distances. At that point, a trace of doubt appeared in Han Li's mind. Since the region occupied by humans in the spirit realm was so small, then how were cultivators ascending from the lower realms able to accurately land in the region controlled by humans? It would have been incredibly dangerous if he appeared in an area outside the grand immortal formation. Han Li felt puzzled, but the book hadn't mentioned anything else, so he could only set the thought aside for the time being. After going through a few descriptions from the book, Han Li discovered that demons as a whole were more powerful than the human clans, but the humans seemed to possess more powerful cultivators. As a result, the 2 clans formed an odd equilibrium, and the 3 sovereigns and 7 kings agreed to a defensive pact as well as several other treaties. One of these agreements noted that high-grade cultivators couldn't arbitrarily suppress low-grade demon beasts of remote areas and couldn't participate in defending human cities from periodic beast waves. In addition, demons couldn't pillage humans at will, and they needed to establish territories where humans could gather and be protected. When the humans and demons divided their land, the territories of the humans and demons were mixed to a vast degree. Although they chose areas most populated by humans and demons, there were still large numbers of either race that lived in other areas. The high-grade human and demon cultivators naturally had no problem with this and decided to move them. However, demon beasts that have yet to gain sentience and ordinary human mortals weren't able to easily move long distances. They could only continue to live on their original lands and accept the rule of another clan. From the beginning, there would be wanton slaughter of either side, and war was waged several times. After much turmoil, another agreement was eventually passed. Of course, the book in Han Li's possession only detailed the most important points and hadn't mentioned them in detail. As for matters relating to the beast wave, he picked out a book for that in particular. The so-called beast waves would occur when ordinary beasts would reproduce in too great a number. Since high-grade individuals couldn't interfere as a result of previous agreements, every period of a few years, the demons and humans had no choice but to slay one another to protect their own lives. However, if there were human settlements in the region, low-grade demon beasts could lead the beast wave into a human settlement in a half-suicidal charge. As a result, apart from a few large cities in particular, most human cities would periodically encounter a beast wave. Although there weren't many true attacks on human settlements, each beast wave would leave a huge number of casualties in their wake. Because of this, low-grade body refiners and cultivators had their fates tied together. While ordinary mortals would die, it was also a time for cultivators and refiners to break through their bottlenecks and be honed in powerful characters. With both disaster and fortune simultaneously occurring, the high-grade human cultivators tacitly allowed the beast waves to continue and held no intention of altering the agreement with the demon clans. Each beast wave on a city didn't follow a strict schedule, but there were 2 types of beast waves that were most commonly seen. They would be the wolf waves from grasslands and serpent waves from other regions. The 2 types of beasts had powerful reproductive ability and were bound to launch a beast wave every 100 years or so. If a city were to encounter 2 or more types of beasts in a beast wave, it would be considered a grand beast wave with far greater danger. In the past, all the breaches into human cities seem to have occurred with grand beast waves. Therefore, if the city knew a grand beast wave was about to occur, the higher echelon of the city would be struck with fear and do their utmost to gather together the nearby body refiners and low-grade cultivators in preparation for the upcoming battle of survival. When Han Li saw this, he sighed and slowly closed the book. There was without question that the city was going to experience another beast wave. Furthermore, with the grasslands being so close to the city, it will be a wave of wolves. However, the nervousness of the city revealed that this was a grand beast wave. He silently picked up the cup of watered wine before him, and he narrowed his eyes in thought. Since he entered the spirit realm, Han Li didn't have much interest in the beast wave. But now that he knew it was related to restoring his magic power and breaking the Ice Phoenix's restriction on his body. And the beast wave was just about to happen. According to the Soaring Sky Beast's incarnation, nascent soul and deity transformation stage cultivators suffer a minor tribulation once every 300 years. Although he no longer had his magic power, the presence of his cultivation still existed. Who knew when tribulation would strike him? If tribulation for a deity transformation stage cultivator truly struck him, he would surely perish with his trifling cultivation at the 4th stage of the Vajra arts and lack of magic treasures. When Han Li thought of this, his expression turned sullen. The best way to settle this matter was to quickly find the Ice Phoenix and mutually remove the restriction from one another. When they encountered mishaps from inside the spatial node, the Ice Phoenix was able to act first in escaping from the spatial node as a result of her innate spatial abilities. She should have already made it somewhere in the spirit realm. Knowing the power of the restriction he placed on her, she should have found herself in a similar situation as himself. In a place as large as the spirit realm, he wouldn't be able to find her in a short amount of time even if he had his magic power. Within 3 human realms and 7 demon lands, there are actually many characters that possess abilities at the level of deity transformation. Now that he didn't have any power to defend himself, it was only wishful thinking to journey off to find her, so he would have to come up with other ways to restore his magic power and save himself. As a current, he couldn't absorb even a thread of his spiritual power, and there wasn't a single secret technique he could use. Cultivating magic power once more would be an impossible task. Seeking out the aid of other high-grade cultivators would also be out of the question. As he possessed many secrets, it would only be courting death. As Han Li sat in his chair, his expression wavered. His gaze shifted, and he muttered with a gloomy expression, "It seems my only choice is to tread the original path." In the coming month in Yuan City, Han Li thought long and hard about how to restore his original abilities. He managed to think of a feasible method in half a month, but it wasn't good by any means, and it would take some time. And with his unfamiliarity with the spirit realm, he hesitated to use this method. But now that he was coming to terms about understanding the spirit realm, it appeared he had no choice but to use this method upon some further deliberation. He would have to cultivate the only technique he could cultivate, the Vajra arts, to grand completion. According to what records said about the technique, when one cultivated the technique to the 7th layer, one's flesh body was overbearing enough to compare with a nascent soul cultivator. In that case, he would be able to use the sheer power of his body to dispel the ice. Phoenix's restriction. When that point comes, it should be a simple matter to cultivate magic power and condense a nascent soul. Although it is said that condensing a nascent soul regularly takes 100 years, with his magic power restored, he could return to the storage pouches he buried in the desert. With the aid of the many spirit medicines it contains, the process will be sped up several times. In one word, the first step to returning his abilities would be to dispel the restriction placed on his body, and then condense his nascent soul. He reckoned that if a minor tribulation were to strike him, it should be in 300 years. But that was only a guess. If he wished to preserve his life, he would have to cultivate the Vajra arts as quickly as he could. The soaring sky beast had previously told him just how difficult it was to cultivate the Vajra arts. Even in the spirit realm where the spiritual chi was incredibly dense, there were very few mortals that could cultivate the Vajra arts to completion. Even if a normal person possessed exceptional talents, they still wouldn't dare to be confident. But Han Li was by no means a normal person. Not only did he cultivate from being a mortal to a deity transformation cultivator, causing his unwavering determination to far exceed those of a common cultivator in the spirit realm, but he also consumed the heavenly corpse pearl, the dragon scale fruit, and many other spiritual medicines. His body was already far stronger than normal. Particularly because of the dragon scale fruit and the bone tempering arts, his body was already on par with that of an ordinary demon beast. When he arrived in the spirit realm, the massive amount of magic power from dissipating his too nascent soul not only saved his life, but they also increased his body's capacity by another level. With all of these things together, it was no wonder Han Li felt confident. As of current, the only thing for him to consider was the inhuman pain he would suffer while cultivating this technique and the amount of time for him to take. Because there were so many low and mid-grade demon beasts roaming around areas far from the city, it would be unwise to cultivate alone. Furthermore, cultivating the last several layers of the Vajra arts would need battle experience for him to increase his odds of making a breakthrough. In that case, there was no harm in remaining with the Heavenly East Enterprise for a time. If he truly felt they were an inconvenience, he would simply leave. As for the blood curse contract that was placed on his body, the blood curse would be cleanly refined by his body from its sheer vital essence. Having come to a decision, Han Li was done for the time being. He took his books and left the restaurant. Then, he found a secluded area and crushed his books with his arms. Under the huge force, they turned into a cloud of paper shreds that floated to the ground. Next, he went around the city to find a blacksmith store. He examined the shop and handed the tendon over to a blacksmith. Afterwards, he pointed to a few other materials in the shop, uttered a few soft instructions, and gave the blacksmith 2 low-grade spirit stones. When the ironworker heard Han Li, he was stunned, but he soon took the 2 spirit stones and nodded with a smile. Han Li left with a smile and flagged down a carriage being pulled by a horse-deer creature of sorts. He didn't care about the animal's origins or whatnot. He simply tossed the driver a silver piece and muttered the words, "The cloud ease in." Then, he entered the carriage and took a brief moment of rest. Beast carriages were being driven by docile animals throughout the city. After all, in a city of this scope, it would be odd to not have any carriages to speak of, as if it would take hours to walk from one district of a city to another. The carriage he was riding was rather beautiful. It was clear the carriage was used to transport those of wealthier families rather than commoners. Hanli's action angered the carriage driver at first, but when he saw the silver piece, he hesitantly drove off to the eastern part of the city. Hanli slept for a short while before he heard the carriage driver say, "Sir, we've arrived at the inn." Hanli slowly opened his eyes and wordlessly walked out of the carriage. He saw a large expanse of pavilions and courtyards with a particularly large building right in front of him. It hung a huge sign that wrote the words "Cloud Ease Inn" in golden letters. To the sides of the building, there was a row of huge stables constructed from wood, housing all sorts of strange beasts and their carriages. Strange animal cries would occasionally sound from them. Hanli swept his sights past them and quickly arrived in front of the large building gate. He called out to a group of waiting young servants, waved towards one of them. The servant quickly reacted and immediately ran over. "Esteemed guest, did you call me out to board here? The Heavenly East Enterprise should have checked in here. Do you know where they are?" Hanli calmly asked, tossing him a piece of silver. When the servant took the silver, he grinned and said, "He, so you're looking for those of the esteemed Heavenly East Enterprise. I will guide you." Soon he brought Hanli through the back of the building and passed through several courtyards. The servant led the way and enthusiastically explained, "There are many esteemed guests from the Heavenly East Enterprise, so they've filled up all of the west courtyards where we have the inn's finest rooms." Hanli listened to the servant's words with complete indifference. But before they reached the courtyard, a youth walked past them and saw Hanli. He yelped and approached them with a wide smile. "Brother Han, you've returned. Very good. Brother Zhang has told us to bring you over to the mistress as soon as we saw you. Please follow me." He then casually grabbed Hanli's arm. Hanli raised his brow and casually shook his shoulder, strangely shaking off the man's grasp. The youth was stunned when he saw this. Hanli smiled and calmly asked, "So it was Brother Luo. Is this mistress you were talking about, Mistress Fang?" The youth was a cavalryman of the Heavenly East Enterprise known as Young Seventh. The odd look on the youth's face disappeared and he answered with a smile, "Of course I was talking about Mistress Fang. She heard about you and is quite curious about you. She wants to see you." Hanli said with a casual tone, "As a member of the organization, I will follow her orders. I will have to trouble you to show me the way." Of course, of course. From how his grip was shaken off, he realized Hanli possessed abilities far beyond his. As he didn't dare to do something else that was disrespectful, he obliged with a smile. Hanli eventually sent away the servant and followed the youth surnamed Luo to the east courtyard. On the way, they saw many guards and cavalrymen and greeted them. After making several turns and passing through a dozen large courtyards, they finally arrived at a small, isolated courtyard. It was rather elegant and peaceful nearby. There were two large, unfamiliar guards standing guard at the gate without weapons. When Hanli walked over to the two large men swept an icy gaze past him. Hanli looked at the two with narrow eyes. The two clearly weren't ordinary body refiners, as demonstrated from the chilling pressure of their gaze. He did sense the two appeared to be stronger than Zhang Qi. "Elder brothers, I am Brother Han, who recently joined the Enterprise. The mistress mentioned she wished to see me." The shorter of the two glanced at Hanli and said, "Ah, you are the person who cultivated the Vajra arts to the third stage. You do appear young, but is that from taking a medicine pill to maintain your appearance?" The words contained were actually rather rude. If you too feel that way, then consider it to be true. Hanli's heart jumped, but he maintained a smile on his face. The larger of the two then snorted and harshly said, "I don't believe you truly cultivated the Vajra arts to the third layer. I'll be testing you, don't take offense." With a cold glint shining from his eye, he grabbed Hanli's wrist. Hanli raised his brow but didn't avoid the large man's hand. When the man touched his wrist, he sensed the man's fingers turn exceptionally cold and release a huge force squeezing his wrist. Hanli wore neither a scowl or a smile, but his eyes turned sullen. Under the man's force, Hanli's wrist glowed with a layer of faint golden light, but it soon disappeared. Soon, Hanli remained still and allowed the man to do as he wished. A short moment later, the large man exerted a large portion of his strength, but Hanli still remained nonchalant. Eventually, the man's face revealed surprise, and he hesitated for a moment. But rather than letting go, he took a deep breath and shined black light from his fingers, exerting even more strength on Han Li's wrist. The smile Han Li wore on his face finally vanished and he snorted, giving a casual shake of his twist. The large man suddenly felt a vibration run through his fingers as his body became numb. Then, with a frightened cry, he felt a huge force travel through him as he flew into the air. As Han Li wore an emotionless expression, the large man was flung into a stone wall nearby. Just as the man was about to have a messy impact, the other guard suddenly pounced 10 meters to quickly catch him. But just as the shorter guard caught his companion in midair, his expression vastly changed, and he reached out to grab him with his other hand. A large thump sounded, followed by 2 softer thuds. Although the shorter guard was able to catch him, he staggered back 8 steps and his complexion was pale. Han Li narrowed his eyes and glanced at the shorter guard. Even against the huge force Han Li released, the shorter guard was still able to catch his companion. The shorter guard's body refinement technique must be the greater of the two. The youth surnamed Luo was left stunned. The 2 men at the gate were Mistress Fang's personal bodyguards. Although they normally didn't mingle with the cavalrymen, they possessed brilliant body refinement techniques to the point where Captain Zhang Qi held them in secret admiration. When the confident cavalrymen thought to test their skill against them, they all suffered a miserable defeat. As for Han Li, who recently joined them, he was able to turn them pale with a flick of his wrist. They weren't able to resist in the slightest. Was the 3rd layer of the Vajra arts alone able to produce this much strength? Youth Luo's expression wavered at the slightest. He couldn't have known that most of Han Li's strength actually stemmed from the many dragon-scale fruits he consumed over hundreds of years in bone-tempering art. Otherwise, even as powerful as the 3rd layer of the Vajra arts may be, he would only be able to produce enough strength to rival the 2 men. Besides, in truth, Han Li cultivated the Vajra arts to the 4th layer. The shorter guard circulated his inner body technique several times before eventually swallowing his frustration. With a calmed expression, he said, "Brother Han possesses exceptional abilities. We concede defeat. Please head in." He couldn't help but look at Han Li with a trace of respect. As for the taller guard that Han Li tossed, his expression turned unsightly. Han Li smiled and gave them a short salute before casually strolling in. Youth Luo naturally didn't have the qualifications to follow him and could only wait outside. When Han Li saw that the main gate to the courtyard building was shut and thought to knock on it, he heard a woman's sweet voice sound from within. "Young Sir Han, please come in. I've been waiting on you for quite a while." Han Li blinked twice and calmly walked in, not feeling particularly surprised. When he went in, his expression stirred. He was surprised to see several people in the room. In the master's seat across from the door sat an azure-robed woman in her 30s. Her skin was fair and her beauty was still present. Behind her stood a blue-robed man that was in his mid-20s. He bore a strong resemblance to the woman. Sitting across from the woman was an embroidered-robed man with a young face and gray hair. He wore an indifferent expression. Sitting at his side was a handsome young man and a beautiful young woman. They seemed to know what happened outside the courtyard gate and looked in Han Li's direction when he entered. The azure-robed woman had a trace of delight on her face, and the blue-robed youth appeared curious. As for the embroidered-robed man, he was wearing a frown, and the young pair simply looked surprised. The azure-robed woman stood up and curtsied him. "Young Sir Han, I hope you don't take offense. My bodyguards tested you on my orders. I simply wish to know if the 3rd layer of the Vajra arts was as fearsome as the rumors said. The technique is widely spread, but it is one of the most difficult body-refining techniques to cultivate. Very few people break through to the 2nd layer, let alone the 3rd like you." Han Li casually asked with a smile, "I am already a member of your enterprise. I can't take offense over a trifling test. Are you pleased by my performance?" Although he planned on concealing himself in the Heavenly East Enterprise as an insignificant character, he didn't mind revealing a portion of his true strength. As of current, Mistress Fang was looking at him in a favorable light. When she heard Han Li's reply, she sweetly smiled and said, "The 3rd layer of the Vajra arts far exceeded my expectations. You've opened my eyes. Ah yes, I should give young Sir Han an introduction. This is my son, Pan Qing. He is cultivating immortal techniques under the Golden Jade sect. These 3 are immortal masters, fellow sect members of my son." So they were immortal masters. Han Li saluted them. Although his spiritual sense couldn't leave his body, it was still quite sharp and sensed their cultivation at this distance. They were all at foundation establishment stage and above. However, The youth and the other young pair appeared to have achieved foundation establishment recently, as their spiritual chi was still quite weak. As for the embroidered-robed man, his magic power was quite dense, so he should be at false core stage, the peak of foundation establishment. With the abilities Hanli showed previously, they didn't dare to treat him light and returned the greeting. The embroidered-robed man even smiled and said, "Although I haven't cultivated body refinement techniques before, my master fought against a high-grade body refiner in the past. It is rumored that person was able to slay several grade 6 and 7 demon beasts by himself. I originally believed them to be fanciful tales, but from what Brother Han displayed, I am convinced they are true. But from the force Hanli displayed, it shouldn't only be a result of the Vajra arts but his nature or divine power as well." This person was quite experienced to see some oddities from Han Li's immense strength. Of course, Han Li wasn't about to reveal the dragon scale fruit and all else. He gave a simple explanation. "Brother Qin is quite sharp. Some of my power comes from an innate nature." The embroidered man nodded, feeling that most of his suspicions had disappeared. Following that, the embroidered man said nothing else. Rather, Mistress Fang had a friendly chat with Han Li, but when she asked about his origins, Han Li gave a vague answer. Mistress Fang didn't pursue the matter when she saw this, and instead informed him that Pan Qing and the others were to assist in Yuan City with the beast wave on orders from their master. The upper echelons of a Yuan City had ties to the Gold Jade sect. The sect would send out low-grade cultivators to use the beast wave as an opportunity to make breakthroughs. The Foundation establishment cultivators were likely sent for this reason as well. Of course, the Gold Jade sect wasn't the only sect that sent disciples over to the city. There were at least a dozen more. When the men of the Heavenly East Enterprise entered in Yuan City, they were also conscripted to fight against the beast wave as per law. As such, Mistress Fang had Han Li act as Zhang Qi's second in directing the guards. When Han Li heard her, he nodded in agreement after brief consideration. When Mistress Fang saw this, she wore a satisfied expression and had Han Li depart. According to what she said, the beast wave could start at any time. Furthermore, it would be a grand beast wave consisting of several types. It would be best for Han Li to rest and hone his spirit. Han Li smiled and promptly left the room. When the door was shut, Mistress Fang's smile vanished and was replaced with hesitation. The embroidered-robed man stroked his chin and asked, "What? Does Mistress Fang feel this person is a rare find and has changed her mind?" Mistress Fang frowned and openly expressed her thoughts. "That is so. This person is young, yet holds his current cultivation. If he were nurtured, I suspect that he will become an existence on the level of old fire. Otherwise, I would have gone with the original plan and have Zhang Qi or the Liu brothers follow you on your journey after the beast wave." The embroidered-robed man shook his head. "I've already seen Captain Zhang and the mistress, Liu brothers. If Brother Han wasn't here, we would use either of them, but now that we have a more suitable candidate, we will have to make the more reliable choice. After all, he completed the third layer of the Vajra arts. He has nothing to fear from the attack of low-grade spirit tools, and his immense strength will make him even more suitable for the journey. If we were to take someone else, the odds of defeat will be greater. If we startle those demon beast guards, we won't get a second chance. Mistress, could it be you don't wish for Junior Marshal Brother Pan to achieve core formation?" Mistress Fang sighed, and she said with a tone of helplessness, "Senior Marshal Brother Qin's words are reasonable. Even if this person has as much potential as old fire, I feel like Kinner's core formation will possess far more potential." The embroidered-robed man felt relief and he smiled. "Lady Fu is quite a sensible person. The breakout of this beast wave turned into an exceptional opportunity. It appears those demon beast guards aren't involving themselves. When the time comes, we might be able to escape from them. That's why although we need a body refiner, he won't necessarily be needed. So long as the matter succeeds, I won't treat him unfairly and make sure he doesn't harbor a grudge against you. Immortal Qin's magic power is quite strong. After you acquire it, there should be no problem in core formation. In the future, I hope you'll look after my son." When that was said, she smiled and didn't directly address him. The man glanced at the blue-robed youth and warmly said, "He, Junior Marshal Brother Pan's aptitude is no less than mine. If I can achieve core formation, Junior Marshal Brother should have no problem with the item in hand. The mistress should feel at ease." Pan Qing saluted his senior martial brother with a deep expression and uttered words of thanks. As for the pair sitting next to the embroidered-robed man, they glanced at one another with a knowing smile. During this time, the atmosphere in the hall became rather friendly. and Li couldn't have known that his first contact with humans in the spirit realm already involved him in a scheme. It was unknown if he was cursed by the heavens or just had bad luck. In case he knew about this matter, he would have simply found himself not knowing whether to laugh or cry. A few trifling mortals and Foundation establishment cultivators thought of using him, a deity transformation cultivator. They were beyond reckless. Even without his magic power, he had methods of easily killing them. But as he was kept in the dark and intended on remaining with the Heavenly East Enterprise, he left the courtyard and went to see the large, scarred man. Not long after, Han Li was appointed a high second in command, but there were others that weren't convinced. But when Han Li revealed a portion of his immense strength, he alarmed them and kept them quiet. Because Han Li was given his own room, he didn't have to mingle with the others. In the following days, he began to grasp the chant for the fifth layer of the Vajra arts. According to the Bright Jade arts, it would be much smoother if he could cultivate using the magic power present in his body. But now, he would have to cultivate the Vajra arts by infusing spiritual chi into his body. He had no choice but to familiarize himself with this strange method before starting his cultivation. 3 days later, Han Li left the inn and disappeared half a day. Apart from those with a discerning eye, most people hadn't noticed that Han Li was gone. But on the 7th day, Han Li was sitting cross-legged on his bed when he suddenly heard huge bell clangs from outside the room. The sound loudly droned and faintly shook the inn. Han Li opened his eyes in shock. The rumbling clangs repeated without end and was soon followed by resounding horns, crying out to the city one after another. Han Li frowned and wordlessly walked out. The west courtyard was already scrambling into action. The guards and cavalrymen were walking out from their rooms with weapons and armor in hand. Their expressions ranged anywhere from excitement to fear and worry. As panic voices sounded through the courtyard, Xianxia walked through with an icy expression and loudly rebuked, "What is there to panic about? It is only a beast wave. It hasn't reached us yet. Return to your rooms and properly rest yourselves. When the time comes, rest will only be a delusionary thought." When the soldiers heard the large man, they all calmed down and obediently returned to their rooms. Han Li saw this with a smile. As Xianxia held his position as the guard commander for over 10 years, his reputation was as high as one would expect. Xianxia glanced over at Han Li and said, "Junior brother Han, follow me to observe and size and scope of the beast wave. Let's see how it compares to what we expected." Han Li quickly replied, "Brother Zhang, I'm ready to follow." In truth, although he didn't take this beast wave to heart, he was indeed a bit curious. He wasn't about to refuse an opportunity to broaden his horizons. When the two walked onto the street outside the inn, he discovered there was something amiss. The bustling streets no sparsely had anyone. There were only a few wanderers and their movements were all flustered. There were several beast carriages on the street, but they were in a mad rush. There were also horned wolves, the same that the Heavenly East Enterprise cavalrymen rode. However, the ones who rode them this time were wearing the armor of city guards. They were rushing through the city, loudly declaring martial law on the city as a result of the upcoming beast wave. They were not only drafting body refiners and soldiers, but common mortals were to stay put in their residences. If they were outside and hindered the efforts of resisting the beast wave, they would be immediately executed. When Han Li and Xianxia rode 2 horned wolves to the nearest wall, there was a large purple-robed man standing at the top of the southmost tower in the city. He looked outside the window with one hand pressed against it and the hand held behind his back. He silently looked in the distance with a sullen expression. Suddenly, the door to his room opened, and a soldier covered in azure bone armor quickly entered. He kneeled behind the azure-robed man and softly reported, "City Lord, we've verified that the beasts gathered in 3 waves. The Jade Grasslands Azure Wolves, the Black Tomb Mountains Crimson Pythons, and the Leacan Beasts." The large purple-robed man sighed and he worriedly said, "So it is an attack by 3 beast types. Very troublesome. If they were other beasts, it would have been fine, but Azure Wolves and Crimson Pythons only join beast waves every 300 years. Not to mention these astonishing numbers, the Leacan Beasts will make things more troublesome as well. They will attack the weakest point of our city. Although we already prepared bows and crossbows, they fly too quickly so common arrows won't be effective. Didn't you place an order from the Heavenly East Enterprise for exploding crystal arrows, sir? We should be able to hold our own against them. Besides, we have cultivators assisting us. They will be a powerful force to defend the skies. With their assistance, the hawks shouldn't be a problem." the armored soldier consoled. The purple-robed man commanded, "We can only hope to rely on them. Arrange the cultivators together and have them keep watch on the hawk's actions. We will have the soldiers and body refiners join forces in dealing with the wolves and pythons. Ah yes, quickly bring our forces to the ready. Have our guards take turns standing guard." "Yes, sir," an armored soldier yelled and went off to execute his order. The large purple-robed man was the Yuan City Lord. He looked out his window with a heavy expression. Han Li stood on top of a segment of the city wall and looked at the distance. Although he appeared calm, his heart was shaken. He saw yellow earth tens of kilometers from the city turn azure. An azure sea spanned as far as he could see. Upon closer inspection, he could make out the silhouette of wolves within them. Their eyes were green and their bodies were azure. Their bared fangs created a savage appearance. The number of wolves were too many to count. They could no longer determine how many hundreds of thousands there were. Apart from the wolf howls, there were the sounds of other beasts mixed in. They sounded in some sort of pattern as if they were communicating with one another. Zhang Qi's face turned somewhat pale, but he gripped his hands in a fist and muttered, "Fortunately, the most common beast are the azure wolves. If we encountered red, yellow, or even the rare silver wolf, I fear that in Yuan City wouldn't be able to survive the beast wave." Silver wolves. When Han Li heard this, something suddenly came to mind. In his surprise, the scarred man explained, "What? Has Brother Han never seen silver wolves before? They are several times harder to handle than other wolves. A common silver wolf is a match for a dozen azure wolves. In the last beast wave, I was lucky enough to see several of them. Their fearsomeness is fresh in my memory." Han Li felt his heart reel. When he heard him mention silver wolves, he was instantly reminded of Silver Moon. She was a giant silver wolf that hailed from the Silver Moon Wolf clan. Perhaps the silver wolves were of the same clan. But regardless of whether this was true, it was no use to him in his current realm. He could only set aside the thought in the back of his mind. Zhang Qi solemnly said, "If it were only common wolves, we wouldn't have anything to fear with our high walls, but unfortunately, they are being led by intelligent low-grade demon beasts. They are also mixed with variant beasts that are halfway to becoming a demon beast. While the variant beasts don't possess the same inconceivable abilities as demon beasts, they are still far more fearsome than any ordinary beast. The size, power, and vicious far exceed their ordinary kind. At the very least, an ordinary low-grade body refiner wouldn't be able to take one alone. How troublesome. Are there many of these variant beasts in the wave?" Zhang Qi pondered briefly and doubtfully said, "There is about one variant beast in 1,000. 1,000? Han Li swept his eyes past the azure beast sea and couldn't help but wryly laugh. Even if he couldn't guess their number, they numbered in the millions at the very least. There should be several thousand variant beasts among them, and with no core formation cultivators guarding the city, those numbers could prove fatal. After taking another look, Zhang Qi sighed, clearly discouraged by the sight, and said, "All right, let's go to other areas and take a look at the other beasts." Although Han Li followed the large man through the city, he still wore a smile and asked, "What, Brother Zhang worries the city defenses won't hold?" Zhang Qi replied with an anxious expression, "I am worried, yes. I've seen several beast waves in the past, but never against a city that was just established in the last 1,000 years. Against a grand beast wave like this one, and with our lacking preparations, they should be able to breach our defenses. Furthermore, this beast wave also has Liacan beasts. Although there won't be too many of them, they will all be grade 1 demon beasts. As we won't be able to protect against them, they will be a large threat to the city." "Are Liacan beasts so fearsome?" A glint flashed in Han Li's eyes and his voice carried doubt. "Liacan beasts aren't considered strong amongst the rank of demon birds, but they carry a formidable toxin that can kill ordinary people. Unless they approach us, we will only be able to attack them from afar. And even worse is how nimble and quick these birds are. While they may be lacking in strength, they are unable to suppress them as they attack the weakest points in the city's defense." With a tone of surprise, Han Li asked, "How did this lack of aerial power come to be? Could it be the Yuan City Lord didn't know this matter would be so critical?" From what he came to know, all positions of secular power within the city belonged to mortals. Even if he knew about it, what could he do? "I heard the last beast wave to attack the city left disastrous damage. Their numbers were almost exhausted. Being able to restore their defensive strength to this level had already exhausted the city lord's influence. The other nearby cities also lent them a few weapons and soldiers. There is nothing else he can do about the air." When Han Li heard this, he was at a loss for words. Not long after, Han Li followed Zhang Kui to another side of the city wall and saw rows of meter-long pythons forming a red beast sea. It appeared even more fearsome than the Sea of Wolves. The only good news to hear from this was that these snakes weren't venomous. As such, their defenses were more lax towards them. As Han Li gazed at the sea of pythons from a distance, he would occasionally spot pythons that were several times larger than the others, and he inwardly gasped. These variant pythons were over 30 meters long, no smaller than a crimson worm. They could easily devour a man, and because the horde of crimson pythons was larger than the azure wolves, it was only natural there would be more of variants. After looking at these two beast hordes, Han Li felt some regret at not being able to see the Liacan beasts. According to what the Zhang Kui said, the hawks were perched at a concealed area. They wouldn't show themselves until it was time to attack. As Han Li looked at the distant pythons, he suddenly asked, "Why haven't the beast hordes launched their attacks?" "The beast hordes are led by intelligent demon beasts. They won't attack us of their own accord. They will be certain to cooperate with the other two demon hordes in a joint assault and strain our forces. Normally, something like this will only occur for another day. Let's go. We need to lead the Heavenly East Enterprise soldiers to the center of the city in preparation for orders. If we are lucky enough to make a breakthrough or comprehend something, it may be worth it to put ourselves in danger." Zhang Kui let out a cold laugh and led Han Li back to the inn. As expected, the guards at the inn had received orders from a Yuan city and were preparing to move out. They were already gathered together. The Gold Jade Sect cultivators were asked for their presence earlier and had already left. Without any hesitation, Zhang Kui immediately shouted and commanded the 200 soldiers of the Heavenly East Enterprise to move out, marching out of the inn in a powerful display. When they arrived on the street, they saw private troops and body refiners head in the direction of the palace, but most of these groups were nowhere as large or formidable as the Heavenly East Enterprise. Their numbers ranged anywhere from 5 or 6 to a dozen. As Han Li traveled together with the others, they caught quite a bit of attention, particularly with the 50 mounted horned wolves. After all, the horned wolves were one of the many beasts that were tamed by the humans of the spirit realm. Each one was meticulously raised from birth, completely erasing their savage nature. As they were able to exhibit greater power when joined together with cavalrymen, their price was considerably high. Only a business as overbearing at the Heavenly East Enterprise had the ability to purchase so many trained horned wolves for their guards. All the people on the streets were heading in the direction of a huge plaza near a city wall. The city was facing the horde of azure wolves. Tens of thousands of empty-handed strong men, a few uniformed troops, and scattered body refiners were already gathered together. There were even a few mounted horned wolves there, but their numbers didn't match the cavalrymen of the Heavenly East Enterprise. Surrounding the plaza were a few fully armed and Yuan city guards keeping order. A silver-armored middle-aged man stood at the other end of the plaza. He was speaking with a Confucian scholar and a Buddhist monk at his side. When Han Li saw this person, he recognized him as the officer he had seen watching the gate. The scholar and the monk were the two cultivators that inspected their troops. The silver-armored middle-aged man had some sort of skill to keep behind the two cultivators. At that moment, the silver-armored man noticed that enough people had gathered together, and he waved his arm. The soldiers behind him roared, utter a string of orders that were already prepared. The first order was to organize a division of cavalrymen. Afterwards, a group of land tortoise carriages rushed into the plaza, carrying a large quantity of weapons and some armor. They began to distribute them to the strong men. As for the body refiners, they didn't hold common weapons in their eye, and they stood in place with a detached gaze. For the time being, private troops such as Han Li and the lone body refiners remained to the side. Then the private troops and body refiners were bewildered by the long wolf cries outside the city. They were resounding and harsh, as if brimming with violent energy. Han Li narrowed his eyes when he heard this. The myriad of wolf howls soared through the heavens like rumbling thunder. The body refiners were better off with only changes in expression, but the commoners felt overwhelmed as the scream filled the world. But that was only the start. They soon heard hissing and strange bird cries from other directions. Although these sounds weren't as overwhelming as the wolf howls, they still sent shivers down people's spines. At that moment, gongs sounded from all the city walls at nearly the same time. A man's voice then filled the air. It wasn't particularly loud, but it reached the ears of everyone in the plaza. "Be careful, the beasts have begun to move. It was a sound transmission that came from a gray-robed Foundation establishment cultivator riding on a flying sword. There appeared to be other flying cultivators giving warnings throughout different districts of the city. Suddenly, an uproar rose through in Yuan City and squads of idle soldiers sprung into action. They immediately scaled the walls, manned the ballistas, and readied themselves for battle. Following a brief stupor, the weapon distribution process was sped up following a loud instruction from the middle-aged man clad in silver armor. Someone finally also began to organize Han Li and all of the new body refinement warriors into groups. Due to the fact that a battle was imminent, all of the body refinement warriors, who were normally quite uncouth and uncooperative, had set aside their egos for the greater good. Thus, it only took a short while for the roughly 200 body refinement warriors present to be split up into a dozen or so groups. The Heavenly East Enterprise also had over 200 members, so they naturally formed a branch of their own. The young and inexperienced mortals remained as a backup squad and weren't deployed right away. Instead, body refinement warriors and trained warriors were deployed onto the city wall to assist the soldiers of Yuan City. Perhaps it was because the group of people from the Heavenly East Enterprise were too eye-catching, but they were chosen to be among the first batch of warriors deployed onto the city walls. As such, Han Li and the other members of the Heavenly East Enterprise were sent to one of the 4 city walls, having been assigned the duty of guarding that city wall with the soldiers who were already stationed there, of which there were more than 1,000. Han Li stood on the city wall and cast his gaze into the distance. The pack of azure wolves had already stopped howling and were slowly converging toward them. There was no end in sight to their vast numbers, making it appear as if a set of azure planes were traveling toward the city. The collective rustling from countless wolf paws scratching against the ground was audible even from their perch on the city wall, creating quite an intimidating symphony that struck all of the onlooking warriors with an indescribable sense of pressure. Many of the soldiers had already paled with fright. However, no one felt the need to deliver a motivational speech or an address to lift everyone's spirits. If the city fell, their families would all be reduced to prey for these vicious wolves. As such, even though they were absolutely petrified, there was no way that any of them would back down. Thus, the low-level military officials on the city wall merely issued a few instructions to prepare for the upcoming battle before everyone waited in silence. The wolf pack didn't appear to be moving very quickly, but they were slowly becoming clearer to everyone as they approached. The most noticeable wolves within the pack were those mutated wolf beasts that were almost twice as large as normal azure wolves. These huge wolves were dispersed in various locations all over the wolf pack, and even though their fur retained their original azure hue, their eyes had turned from black into a rather unsettling green color. Through those menacing green eyes, a hint of spiritual nature could be gleaned. Han Li's brows furrowed upon seeing this. Those mutated wolf beasts were going to be rather troublesome to deal with. Furthermore, there were also a great number of them. At this moment, Han Li was standing next to a giant of a man who was around 20 feet tall, and both of them were situated behind the Yuan City military official that was responsible for guarding this wall. This was a suggestion raised by Zhang Kui, who had experienced several beast torrents. He knew the importance of commanders during these perilous events, so he had sent these 2 to protect the military official. After all, if this official were to fall, the situation on this entire city wall would be plunged into turmoil. The huge man standing next to Han Li was also a body refinement warrior from the Heavenly East Enterprise by the name of Du Zio. He was using a rather strange cultivation art that made his body grow to a massive size while also granting him immense strength and power. The bigger he became, the more astonishing his strength would be. Apparently, he had already practiced that cultivation art to an extremely high level. Prior to Han Li's arrival, he was the most powerful warrior among Heavenly East Enterprise. Back when Han Li was given the role of deputy squad leader, he was one of the people who had challenged his authority. However, following a demonstration of strength where Han Li had picked up a massive rock weighing several tons before hurling it into the air with ease, Du Zio had conceded his inferiority and bowed to Han Li's authority. At present, Han Li was wielding what appeared to be an ordinary thick blade in his hand. Meanwhile, Du Zio was carrying a custom-made mace that was around 20 feet in length, and each of them was standing on either of the aforementioned military official. The official appeared to be around 30 years of age with a slightly thin build. He wore a suit of metal armor, and even though his facial features were quite mundane and nondescript, He had a pair of bright and piercing eyes and a naturally intimidating aura. Even though he was only an ordinary official in the army, he was also quite a powerful body refinement warrior. That wasn't anything to be perplexed about. After all, most body refinement warriors among the mortals of the spirit realm chose to join the armies of their respective cities. There was no lack of fearsome individuals among them who had cultivated their body refinement arts to the extreme, and even high-grade cultivators had to be wary of them. Just as Han Li was appraising the torrent of azure wolves approaching the city in an expressionless manner, a series of low yet explosive thumps suddenly erupted from behind him. Immediately thereafter, over 100 crimson fireballs, each of which was several tens of feet in size, flew forth from a certain point within the city, crashing viciously into the wolf pack that was only several kilometers away from the city walls. Thunderous booms rang out in rapid succession as hundreds of balls of flames exploded among the wolf pack, creating a scene of absolute carnage. Even though these were only normal flames, these wolf beasts were only normal beasts themselves, so they were completely defenseless against this scorching fire. And Li's expression changed slightly upon seeing this before he turned to glance back toward a certain direction behind him. There, on a vacant patch of land not far away from the city wall, over 100 catapults had been set up side by side. There was a large horde of warriors placing spherical crimson objects onto the catapults before these objects were launched in unison, following a loud command. As these objects were launched through the air, they transformed into giant fireballs, arcing through the air before landing among the wolf pack on the other side of the city wall. Countless more azure wolves were instantly reduced to charred carcasses. After just 2 waves of these attacks, close to 20,000 azure wolves had been slain. Just as Han Li was feeling slightly surprised by the destructive power of these catapults, the attacks suddenly stopped and no further waves of fireballs were launched following the second wave. Just as a contemplative look had appeared on Han Li's face, the wolf pack in the distance began to let loose a series of vigorous howls, as if they had been enraged by the previous 2 waves of attacks. All of the mutated wolf beasts began to lead from the front, and the entire wolf pack began to accelerate. The scratching of countless wolf paws on the ground had turned into a thunderous rumbling, and the wolf pack covered a distance of around 500 meters in virtually the blink of an eye before launching ferocious attacks against the city walls. One azure wolf after another sprang into the air, digging their sharp claws into the smooth surface of the city wall. Their claws were able to embed themselves around an inch deep into the wall, and they were able to gallop up the wall using their claws as makeshift climbing holds. Following a series of loud instructions from the military officials atop the city walls, all types of arrows began to rain down like a torrential storm, striking and felling countless azure wolves. The mortals of the spirit realm were a lot more powerful than those of the human world, and their destructive power was naturally also quite immense. However, there were simply far too many azure wolves attacking the city walls. All of them ignored their fallen comrades as they attacked the wall in a maddened frenzy, and it didn't take long before some wolf beasts made it to the top of the walls. Human warriors had been eagerly awaiting for their arrival, and as soon as one azure wolf clambered onto the top of the city wall, it would be met by 3 or 4 spear or halberd weapons at once, instantly puncturing its vitals before it had any chance to wreak further havoc. Arrows fell like rain, while the clanging of countless weapons intermingled with the war cries from the human warriors, as well as the howls of the oncoming wolf beasts. Meanwhile, Han Li refrained from engaging in battle. He merely followed the military official that he had been tasked with protecting, as the latter strode back and forth along the city wall, barking vehement instructions at his soldiers. In his eyes, the ordinary azure wolves appeared to be quite ferocious, but they didn't actually pose a substantial threat to the city. The truly arduous battle was still yet to come. On another city wall that was being attacked by crimson pythons, it was too far away for Han Li to be able to clearly discern what was happening, but the sounds of battle ringing out from that direction suggested that the crimson python beasts had also begun to launch their assault. The battle commenced at noon and continued well into the afternoon, enshrouding the entirety of Yuan City in an aura of blood and gore. The light in the sky was beginning to dim as one sun disappeared after another, gradually being replaced by their moon counterparts. However, the assault from the wolf pack showed no signs of stopping, and had instead become even more violently and ferocious. As beasts that hadn't yet attained intelligence, they would only begin to tap into their full potential at the height of their bloodlust. The calm expression worn by the military official that Han Li was guarding had begun to darken. After just half a day of battle, a third of the normal soldiers on the city wall had already perished. There were even 20 members of the Heavenly East Enterprise that had fallen in battle. Right at this moment, two sharp wolf howls erupted from the rear of the Azure Wolf Pack. The mutated wolf beasts that had disappeared into the pack once the assault against the city had commenced had finally revealed themselves once again. These massive wolves were easily 50 to 60 feet tall, and they galloped as fast as lightning. The arrows fired by ordinary soldiers were almost completely ineffective against them, and they raced up the city wall as fast as the wind. The soldiers stationed atop the city wall naturally immediately lashed out with their weapons, but these giant wolves simply sprang up high in the air in the response, leaping over their soldiers before turning around to attack them from behind. As soon as these mutated wolf beasts entered the fray, the number of casualties within the human camp immediately spiked drastically. A few mutated wolf beasts had also made it onto the city wall that Han Li was situated on, and around a dozen soldiers were slain in the blink of an eye. The military official immediately instructed the body refinement warriors of the Heavenly East Enterprise to combat these wolf beasts, while the normal soldiers continued to ward off the normal Azure wolves. Sure enough, Zhang Qi and the group of a dozen or so body refinement warriors were able to quickly contain the situation. However, a cry of surprise suddenly rang out from a group of soldiers nearby, following which two mutated wolf beasts sprang over the patch of the city wall that was closest to the military official. As soon as they descended atop the city wall, the two massive wolf beasts swept aside the soldiers in their way and pounced toward the military official. They were intelligent enough to know that this armored man was the leader of the humans, and had even set up a diversion that allowed them to launch a surprise attack against him. Piss off! Du Zio let loose an almighty roar as he swung his mace toward the oncoming wolf beasts with astonishing might. These mutated wolf beasts possessed far more powerful bodies than normal Azure wolves, but there was no way that they were going to survive a direct attack from such a devastating mace blow. Just as the first wolf beast was about to be steamrolled by Du Zio's huge mace, an incredible turn of events suddenly unfolded. A burst of faint azure light suddenly radiated from that wolf beast's body, following which it shrank down to the same size as a normal azure wolf. As such, the mace merely glanced past above its head, completely missing its target. A vicious light flashed through the azure wolf's eyes as its speed suddenly increased by twofold, allowing it to rapidly skirt around Du Zio as it pounced toward the military official. That's a demonic wolf. The military official's expression changed drastically at the sight of the Azure Wolf's bizarre transformation, and he immediately drew his longsword without any hesitation. White spiritual light then flashed from a spirit tool ring on his finger, and the longsword transformed into a swath of sword projections that shielded his body within. It turned out that this seemingly nondescript military official was carrying a low-grade spirit tool with him. In the face of the barrier of sword projections conjured up by the low-grade spirit tool, a hint of disdain flashed through the oncoming wolf beast's eyes. It merely raised its two front paws before swiping them rapidly through the air several times, upon which azure claw projections were sent hurtling toward the official from all directions. As soon as the claw's projections struck the barrier of sword projections, the latter was destroyed almost without any capacity for resistance amid a series of loud booms. In contrast, the azure claw projections were only slowed down minutely before continuing to descend toward the military official. The military official unleashed a resilient swing of his sword in response, but he knew that his resistance would prove to be completely futile, and his face had already turned deathly pale in the face of impending death. Right at this moment, a humanoid figure suddenly swayed beside him as another person rushed into the inescapable net of claw projections. The figure let loose a cold harumph, and even though it wasn't very loud, the military official felt as if a bell were tolling directly beside his ear, completely jerking him out of his horror and despair. The figure then raised a hand, and a swath of golden light met the oncoming claw projections. An earth-shattering boom erupted as all of the azure claw projections were shattered into nothingness by the golden light. The military official was ecstatic upon seeing this, and only then did he catch a clear glimpse of his savior. It was none other than the other man who had been deployed to protect him, Han Li. Han Li was currently in the process of slowly withdrawing a fist that was shimmering with golden light. At the same time, he was appraising the azure demonic wolf that was hovering in midair in a completely expressionless manner. The demonic wolf had stopped itself cold in its tracks, and was staring at Han Li with a hint of bewilderment in its eyes. All of the azure hackles on its back had stood up on end, and it seemed to be extremely wary toward Han Li. The demon beast was unable to ascertain Han Li's cultivation base, but its keen instincts told it that this human was extremely dangerous, seemingly capable of posing a threat to its life. As such, it was rather hesitant about how to proceed. After missing with his attack and allowing the demonic wolf to skirt around him, Du Zio was given a massive fright, and he hurriedly turned around before appraising the demonic wolf with a grim expression. Thus, the demon beast was sandwiched between Han Li and Du Zio, while the other body refinement warriors from the Heavenly East Enterprise were also converging toward it, clearly trying to completely surround it. The demonic wolf aimed a wary glance at Han Li, before abruptly turning and pouncing toward Du Zio as a streak of azure light. Du Zio was quite startled by this abrupt attack, and he reflexively lashed out with his mace. However, the demonic wolf had no intention of engaging it in battle. It merely sprang up over his head before jumping down from the city wall and disappearing into the wolf pack again. Aside from the one that had been slain, all of the other mutated wolf beasts had also fled the scene. Han Li remained standing on the spot, expressing no intention to give chase. Even though he had lost all of his magic power, he still couldn't muster up any interest in pursuing such a pitifully weak low-grade demon beast. The military official had just brushed shoulders with death, and he immediately extended genuine words of gratitude toward Han Li. "Thank you for saving my life, brother. If you hadn't stepped in, I'd be a dead man already." Han Li merely sighed and waved a hand in response. "I may have saved you, but there are other demonic wolves appearing in other locations. The situation doesn't seem to bode well for us." "How could this be? How could there be so many demonic wolves in this one pack?" The military official hurriedly scanned his gaze across the city wall, upon which his face paled once again. The city wall that they were situated on had suddenly descended into complete turmoil, and thousands of azure wolves had already rushed onto the city wall. In the air above them, there were several glowing demonic wolves hovering in the air, overseeing the proceedings. Not only was the military official plunged into despair upon seeing this, even the hearts of the normal soldiers and members of the Heavenly East Enterprise had completely sunk. Could it be that this city wall really was going to be breached by this wolf pack? The same harrowing thought surfaced in everyone's hearts. Just as all of the human troops on the city wall were about to be overwhelmed by the relentless torrent of oncoming azure wolves, the sound of a horn being blown suddenly rang out from atop the city wall, following which several hundred powerful body refinement warriors suddenly rushed out from behind them. All of them wearing bone armor of different styles, while wielding a diverse range of weapons, all of which were low-grade spirit tools. As soon as they rushed onto the city wall, they tore through the torrent of azure wolves like tigers running through a herd of sheep. With each and every swing of their weapons, at least one azure wolf would be felled, and all of them were completely powerless to resist. Even though the mutated wolf beasts were more troublesome to deal with, they were given special treatment as several body refinement warriors ganged up on them at once, and they were also being felled without being able to offer much resistance. The demonic wolves hovering in the air flew into a thunderous rage upon seeing this, and they were just about to do something when a dozen or so body refinement warriors took the initiative, flying into the air to engage these demonic wolves in battle. Right at this moment, another long wolf howl erupted from within the wolf pack at the foot of the city wall. All of the demonic wolves hesitated momentarily upon hearing this howl before fleeing into the distance, refraining from engaging the body refinement warriors in battle. All of the remaining normal azure wolves also began to retreat after hearing this loud howl, fighting to clamber down the city walls just as quickly as they had come. The body refinement warriors continued to give chase, but most of the wolf beasts still managed to escape. Thus, the entire wolf pack began to retreat, and the first day of battle drew to a conclusion. Both sides had suffered severe losses, but all in all, the human army had won the day. The azure wolf pack had suffered over 100,000 casualties, while most of the human troops had survived the assault. The only downside was that they had expended a large number of arrows and defensive tools in the process. As such, it was difficult to say with conviction who had gained the upper hand following this opening exchange. At this point, 7 moons had already surfaced over the night sky. The collective light from the 7 moons shone down from above, illuminating the countless wolf carcass piled up at the foot of the city wall. In the distance, the wolf pack was howling up at the moons. However, their howls were filled with grief and sorrow rather than ferocity and bloodlust. The massive wolf pack slowly retreated into the distance under the cold moonlight before disappearing into the night. Only then did the soldiers on the city wall heave a collective sigh of relief. All of them collapsed to the ground without even bothering to tend to their injuries, and some had already fallen asleep from excessive exhaustion. Even the body refinement warriors were feeling quite exhausted after such an extended, arduous battle, and they were also planning to take a rest. Don't lie down here. This is not the place to sleep. There will be other soldiers coming up to replace us soon. We've withstood the first assault, so we should be able to rest for a couple of days before the next wave of attacks. Once the next group of soldiers arrives to take our place, we can all return to our respective residents and take a good rest. For now, all of you have to get up and continue to stand on guard. We have to be prepared in case the wolf pack decides to suddenly turn around and launch another attack. The military official still didn't dare to let down his guard. All of the soldiers and members of the Heavenly East Enterprise were ecstatic upon hearing that they'll be relieved of their duties soon, and all of them forced themselves to shrug off their exhaustion and get up again. Han Li had barely done anything during the entire battle, so he naturally wasn't really tired. He was standing atop the city wall, seemingly in deep thought as he looked at the departing wolf pack. Zhang Kui made his way over to Han Li with a smile as he said, "Brother Han, it's all thanks to you that we were able to force the demonic wolves away. Otherwise, today's battle could have ended very badly for us." He was holding his golden luster sword, and his entire body was stained with blood, clearly having slain many azure wolves during the battle. "I didn't do much. The wolf pack was going to retreat anyway," Han Li replied with a calm expression. "That may be the case, but if it weren't for your intervention, we would have suffered far heavier losses before the wolf pack retreated. No one else would have been able to force back a demonic wolf so convincingly on their own had they been in your place. Even with this golden luster sword, I would have, at most, a 30% chance of defeating a demonic wolf." A wry smile appeared on Zhang Kui's face as he produced an intricately crafted scabbard before carefully sheathing the golden luster sword. Han Li shot a glance at this spirit tool just as Zhang Kui was about to stow it away. He already knew that these so-called spirit tools were actually just special treasures designed by cultivators for body refinement warriors to use. The spirit tools didn't require the user to possess any magic power of their own, and drew upon energy from spirit stones instead. Spirit tools were quite powerful, but using them required the expenditure of a large number of spirit stones. As such, not every body refinement warrior was able to use such tools. However, even the most powerful spirit tools couldn't compare to true treasure, so they weren't very appealing to high-grade body refinement warriors. They were of the opinion that the best weapon they could attain was a powerful physical body. In that aspect, the thought process of body refinement warriors was quite similar to that of demon beasts. Just as Han Li was pondering these thoughts, Zhang Kui suddenly said something that sent a slight jolt running through his heart. "Brother Han, you've only mastered the third layer of the Vajra arts, right?" Zhang Kui suddenly asked. "Why do you ask, Brother Zhang?" Han Li answered his question with one of his own. "Well, it's just that I don't think a normal body refinement warrior who has mastered the third layer of the Vajra arts can force a demonic wolf into retreat. Looks like you truly are destined for great things, Brother Han." Zhang Kui gave Han Li a final meaningful look before departing. Han Li looked on at his departing figure and stroked his chin as a faint smile appeared on his face. Zhang Kui was clearly implying something with his words. Not long after this, a large group of Yuan city soldiers was led by a low-level military official as they scaled the city wall. The members of the Heavenly East Enterprise were finally relieved of their duties. However, they naturally couldn't return to the inn. Instead, they were organized to stay in a cluster of stone cabins near the plaza where they had gathered several days ago. Almost everyone fell asleep as soon as they entered the cabins. Han Li wasn't tired at all, but he still stayed in his cabin and meditated on his bed. A tranquil and uneventful night passed by. The next morning, thunderous beastly roars erupted in the distance once again. Not long after that, the second day of battle commenced on the city walls. This battle seemed to be even more fierce than the one that had taken place the day before, raging from early morning all the way into the night. Groups of backup soldiers were summoned out of the stone cabins one after the other, then hurriedly dragged onto the city walls to provide reinforcements. Within the span of a single day, 3 or 4 groups had been taken from the area of the plaza that Han Li was situated in alone. The beast hordes only retreated when night fell once again. When Han Li emerged from his stone chamber that night, he was greeted by the sight of the soldiers who had just been relieved of their duties and were returning to the plaza. It appeared that around 70% to 80% of all of the troops deployed had been killed in battle, and the small proportion that remained were all covered in blood. Most of them were carrying injuries, and some were even missing limbs. They were in a much more sorry state than Han Li's group from the day before. By this point, many other people had also made their way out of the nearby stone chambers, and they were also stunned by what they saw. Some of them immediately began to inquire about what had taken place during the battle earlier today, and only then were they informed that a type of small wolves that resembled leopard cats had appeared among the wolf pack attacking the city today. Not only were they extremely nimble and agile, they were capable of blasting their fur through the air like porcupine quills. These strands of fur were infused with lethal poison, and one would quickly lose the ability to move after being struck by them. If timely treatment wasn't administered, the victim's condition would then quickly deteriorate, ultimately leading to death. No one had ever seen or even heard of these small wolves before, so they were most likely a new breed of mutated azure wolf beasts. Such occurrences weren't common during beast torrents, but they weren't considered to be overly remarkable either. Every time a new breed of mutated beasts appeared, the humans would be caught off guard by their unique attributes and suffer heavy casualties as a result. However, these new breeds of mutated beasts would be eliminated very quickly through natural processes. Otherwise, there would be far more breeds of mutated beasts in the wolf pack than there actually were. These small mutated wolves had appeared large numbers during the battle that had just taken place, killing most of the troops that had been deployed to guard the city wall. If it weren't for the fact that the group of spirit tool-wielding body refinement warriors, known as the Spirit Squad, had intervened on numerous occasions, it was quite possible that all of the troops deployed today would have been completely wiped out. Everyone listened with heavy hearts to the harrowing recounts delivered by the soldiers who were fortunate enough to have returned alive. Everyone was struck by the impression that this beast torrent appeared to be far more perilous than past beast torrents had been rumored to be. In the face of such fearsome beastly foes, their confidence was beginning to waver. Han Li looked with narrowed eyes for a while before returning to his stone cabin. His expression remained completely unchanged throughout this entire process. In reality, he was feeling just as unfazed as he looked. Even if a Yuan city really did fall, it wouldn't be an issue for him to escape from the beast torrent with his 2 immortal vanquishing beads. As for the other people in the city, he wouldn't be able to save them even if he wanted to, so he certainly wasn't going to try to be a hero and bite off more than he could chew. However, with the ferocity of the assaults that these beasts were launching against the city, it would perhaps be their turn to guard the city wall again soon. As things turned out, Han Li was spot on with that guess. On the morning of the third day, when the sun had just barely risen over the horizon, all of the members of the Heavenly East Enterprise were summoned to gather on the plaza. When Han Li appeared on the plaza in a calm manner, he discovered that there were several hundred other burly men already present on the palace, in addition to the members of the Heavenly East Enterprise. A small portion of these men were body refinement warriors, and there was no lack of individuals among them who were carrying spirit tools such as spirit rings or spirit bracelets. All of the knights on their wolf steeds were also present at the scene. These people clearly comprised the most powerful troops this city had to offer. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly before he joined the crowd in an unhurried manner. A short while later, close to 1,000 people had gathered on the plaza, and the person who had summoned them was none other than that middle-aged military official clad in silver armor. He delivered an address to everyone, informing all of the warriors present that the situation on the other battlefronts was quite dire, and that their services were required in order to reinforce the city walls. This piece of news came as quite a surprise to everyone. They were aware that the Azure Wolf beasts had been very troublesome to handle during the past couple of days, but who would have thought that the situation on the other battlefronts would be even more dire? Thankfully, all of the people gathered were seasoned warriors, and they were able to quickly compose themselves before climbing onto the beast-drawn carriages that had been prepared for them in advance, which then sped toward the other side of a Yuan city. Letter 1D4 1F, letter 1D5 FF, letter 1D4 1E, letter 1D6 AT, letter 1D6 A0, letter 1D4 1E. Letter 1D554, letter 1D560, letter 1D696. Aside from a few knights who were on patrol, there was not a single pedestrian to be seen on the streets within the city. As such, the beast-drawn carriages didn't have to contend with any traffic congestion, allowing them to travel full speed ahead. After just over 2 hours, the carriages had arrived at the foot of the city wall on the other side of Yuan City, following which everyone quickly disembarked. There were already a dozen or so military officials waiting for them nearby, and they immediately swooped on Han Li and the others like hungry vultures, squabbling with one another as they fought to choose the best warriors for themselves. After all of the warriors were split up, they were led to their respective watchtowers. Thus, all of the members of the Heavenly East Enterprise had naturally also been split up. There were only 7 or 8 normal guards from the Heavenly East Enterprise who had been assigned to Han Li's group, while Zhang Qi, Du Zio, and all of the other powerful body refinement warriors had all been split up. The man leading Han Li's group was a heavily bearded middle-aged military official. From the silver armor that he was wearing, it appeared that he was an official of the same rank as the man whom Han Li had been tasked with protecting 3 days ago. This man was very benevolent and hospitable toward body refinement warriors like Han Li. In particular, he treated the 3 spirit tool-wielding warriors in their group in an extremely respectful manner, and it was quite clear that he was relying heavily upon them. Aside from the few members of the Heavenly East Enterprise in the group, no one else was aware of how powerful Han Li was, so he naturally didn't attract the attention of the military official. Han Li obviously wasn't going to strut around boasting about his own powers, either. He merely followed everyone else in silence as they climbed up onto the city wall. The scenes that greeted everyone up there were quite distressing. The smooth city wall had been completely ruined, as had the watchtower they had been assigned to, and everyone wore grim expressions as they appraised the carnage around them. What was even more disconcerting was that azure ground had been completely stained black, and a putrid rotten smell was wafting through the air, striking everyone with the urge to empty the contents of their stomach. A man wearing a spirit bracelet inspected the inky black substance on the ground with a grave expression before remarking, "This is snake venom." A bitter smile appeared on the heavily bearded military official's face as he confirmed, "That's right, it is indeed snake venom. Over 400 of our soldiers have already lost the ability to battle due to the effects of this snake venom. If I recall correctly, crimson python beasts don't possess any venom, isn't that right?" An elderly man who was also carrying a spirit tool asked with a perplexed look. "You're also correct, Brother Li. Normal crimson python beasts are indeed devoid of venom, but a mutated breed of winged pythons have appeared this time. They're around the same size and appearance as a normal crimson python, but they're able to fly for short periods of time using their wings, and they can blast this type of black venomous mist out of their mouths. As soon as anyone comes into contact with this venomous mist, their skin and flesh will immediately rot away. The venom is even strong enough to dissolve through rock and stone. I've already sent people up here to wash away the venom several times. Otherwise, even breathing would be a health hazard up here," the heavily bearded military official explained. "Crimson python beasts all possess immense strength. Now that they can also breathe venomous mist, they'll be very troublesome to deal with," someone within the crowd mused with a concerned expression. "If it weren't for the fact that these crimson python beasts are so formidable, the higher-ups wouldn't have deployed all of you here. I heard that a new breed of mutated wolf beast also seems to have appeared among the Azure Wolf Pack." The military official stroked his beard with a grave expression. "Why aren't those cultivators taking care of the Azure Wolf Beast? All of them specialize in unleashing large-scale attacks that can wipe out large hordes of beasts at once. In the past, they've always formed the backbone of our resistance against these beast torrents," someone else in the crowd asked. "Don't forget that those Leakin beasts haven't appeared even once yet during this beast torrent. Those cultivators have to be reserved for combating more demon beasts that are more fearsome. If those demon beasts appear after they've expended all of their magic power on lesser beasts, then there would be no hope left for our Yuan City," the military official gave a forlorn reply. Everyone began to look at one another with concerned expressions after hearing this reply. It appeared that Yuan City's future wasn't a very optimistic one. The military official could see the pessimism creeping into his troops, and he immediately offered some words of encouragement. "All right, there's no need to be overly concerned, everyone. The mutated winged pythons are only able to expel one blast of venomous mist at a time. After that, they have to rest for a while. Furthermore, from our observations during the past couple of days, we've deduced that those mutated pythons have lost almost all of their ability to battle. The instructions I received from my higher-ups were to ask all of you to focus most of your firepower on those mutated giant pythons. It's very difficult for normal soldiers to harm them at all, and all of the damage done to this city wall have been inflicted by them. If you can hold off those giant pythons, we're confident in our ability to combat the normal crimson python beasts. Seeing as we've already come here, we'll naturally be sure to lend you our assistance. However, the man with the spirit bracelet was just about to say something when a loud cry suddenly erupted in the distance. The cry sounded like a mix between the crow of a bird and the roar of a beast, but also resembled neither of the two at the same time. It was an extremely unsettling cry that caused the listeners' blood to churn within their veins. The man's words came to an abrupt halt as a strained look appeared on his face. The same expression also appeared on everyone else's faces. The Leakin beasts are finally here, a body refinement warrior murmured to himself as he unconsciously tightened his grasp around the weapon in his hand. At this moment, Han Li was standing alone in a corner, inspecting a low-grade spirit stone that was sitting in his hand. His expression was extremely tranquil, as if he hadn't heard that unsettling cry at all. Sure enough, a short while later, several hundred black spots suddenly appeared in the distance. These black spots were all flying rapidly toward the city, and they were responsible for emitting those ghastly cries. The humans on the city wall immediately reacted as they adopted a defensive formation, preparing to engage the oncoming enemies. Almost at the exact same moment, over 100 streaks of light of different colors flew out from a tall building at the center of the city. All of those streaks of light then hurtled directly toward the approaching black spots in the distant sky. The cultivators in the city had finally sprung into action. Most of these cultivators were at the Foundation establishment stage, but they were flying quite quickly atop their respective treasures. The cultivators managed to reach the city wall before the Leakin beasts did before hovering in the air. The two people leading the group consisted of a bald, brawny man standing atop a round disc, as well as that brocade-robed man from the Golden Jade sect. Both of them had reached the false core stage, which was the highest cultivation base among all of the cultivators present. The black spots in the distance were only several kilometers away from the city wall now, but they suddenly stopped and began to circle around indecisively in the air at low altitudes. At this point, the people on the city wall were already able to discern the true appearance of these black spots. They discovered that these were all demon beasts with leopard heads and falcon bodies. All of them had a pair of white and yellow feathered wings each, and their eyes were gleaming with purplish red light, while their bodies shimmering in all manners of exuberant colors, presenting a very beautiful sight to behold. These demons' beasts were only several feet in size each, and they were quite petite and graceful in flight. Judging from their outward appearance alone, they didn't look all that threatening at all. However, all of the cultivators in the sky wore extremely grim expressions, seemingly quite wary of these demon beasts. In the distance, a few short and sharp cries rang out from among this pack of Leakin beasts. Immediately thereafter, a vast cloud of dust and debris appeared in the distance amid bursts of loud, piercing screeches. One crimson python after another began to emerge from the ground below before raising their heads and extending their forked tongues. All of a sudden, a tumbling and writhing sea of crimson had appeared before the city wall with no end in sight. All of the warriors standing atop the city wall drew a collective sharp intake of breath upon witnessing this ominous sight. It appeared that they had truly hit the jackpot this time. They had only just arrived to provide reinforcements, and they were being attacked by both Leakin beasts and crimson python beasts. Thankfully, the cultivators were present to deal with the most troublesome Leakin beasts. Otherwise, they wouldn't stand a chance against this latest beast torrent. Just as all of the body refinement warriors on the city wall were feeling slightly relieved by the presence of the cultivators above the city wall, two demon beasts, one large and one small, suddenly shot forth through the air, flying toward them from the distance. The smaller of the two demon beasts was only around a foot in size, and its entire body was enshrouded under a barrier of shimmering blue spiritual light. As if flapped its wings, the sound of indistinct thunderclaps could be heard. The larger demon beast had a vicious purple light gleaming in its eyes, and it was several times larger than a normal Leakin beast, yet its size was the only feature that set it apart from its brethren. Right as those demon beasts revealed themselves, three python beasts also emerged from the crimson sea down below, one of which was rather small while the other two were much larger. The largest of the trio was over 100 feet in length with massive thick scales running all over its body. I also had a pair of crimson coral-like horns growing on its head, and it bore a strong resemblance to a crimson worm. The second largest python was covered entirely in inky black scales. At the same time, it possessed three identical triangular heads, all of which appeared to be extremely vicious and menacing. As for the smallest among the trio, this was the demon beast with the head of a man and the body of a snake. It had a pair of arms, attached to which were a pair of hands that were each holding a bone spear. This was none other than that snake demon that had once attacked Han Li in the Azure Sifting Desert. These 5 demon beasts were clearly the most powerful beings among this latest beast torrent, but they seemed a little hesitant. All 5 of them glanced at the city wall before communicating through a series of screeches and loud cries. Immediately thereafter, they returned to their respective brethren and disappeared again. All of a sudden, all of the Leacan beasts in the air and the army of crimson pythons on the ground seemed to have received the same instruction, spurring them on toward the city wall in unison amid bursts of thunderous rumbling. The Leacan beasts were far faster than the crimson pythons on the ground below, so they naturally reached in Yuan City first. All of them began to let loose loud, unsettling cries once again as green demonic mist began to emanate from their bodies. In the beginning, only a faint layer of mist had been emitted. However, this quickly transformed into a dense cloud of mist that enshrouded all of the Leacan beasts within. Thus, a vast expanse of demonic green mist around an acre in area took shape within the blink of an eye, surging forth like a formidable wave. The bald false core cultivator no longer hesitated upon seeing this. He let loose an almighty roar of rage as he led the charge toward the demon beasts, followed by all of the other cultivators behind him. Prior to even making contact with the green demonic mist, all of the cultivators raised their hands into the air in quick succession to blast forth a series of talismans. A string of loud boom erupted in rapid succession, as countless balls of lightning and fire of different colors exploded after entering the green mist. Thunderous explosions rang out incessantly, forcibly dissipating the green mist through the might of the explosions. The human cultivators then immediately summoned their treasures without any hesitation. Flying sabers, flying swords, magic beads, Buddhist staves, short dagger, all manners of weapons appeared in the air before hurtling toward the green demonic mist. At the same time, the green mist up ahead tumbled and surged violently as countless demonic feathers shot forth, raining down upon the oncoming treasures like a torrential storm of green light. The Leacan beasts appeared to be capable of holding their own against the attacks from the human cultivators. Upon seeing this, all of the human cultivators began to make hand seals and chant incantations, manipulating their treasures to tear through the storm of green light. However, there seemed to be no end to the demonic feathers flying out from within the green mist, and none of them human cultivators dared to advance any further, seemingly quite wary of this green mist. Thus, a fierce impasse ensued in the air above. At this moment, the crimson pythons had also finally reached the foot of the city wall. The crimson pythons split up into groups of a dozen or so, each of them biting onto one another's tails to create interconnected chains over 100 feet in length. These chains of crimson pythons coiled before springing up into the air like massive arrows, traveling toward the summit of the city wall at alarming speeds. After rising into the air, the crimson pythons all separated once again, before swinging their bodies viciously toward the soldiers standing atop the city wall. By employing this tactic, they were able to completely disregard the obstacle posed by the tall city walls. Most of the warriors who had been deployed to this city wall had fought crimson python beasts before, but very few of them had witnessed such an innovative strategy being employed by these pythons. As such, they were caught completely off guard and were scrambling to set up retaliative measures. In contrast, the ordinary and Yuan City soldiers seemed to have already predicted such an occurrence. All of them immediately gathered into groups in an orderly manner, with the front rows of soldiers raising their shields to form barricades while the soldiers behind them attacked using their crossbows. It appeared to be quite an effective strategy. The massive crossbows on the city wall were also shooting arrows that were around 10 feet in length each, sending them flying through the air at alarming speeds. Cold light flashed as one crimson python after another was skewered by the massive crossbow arrow before they had a chance to scale the city wall. With just a single arrow, over 10 crimson pythons were felled at the same time. Following a brief period of panic, the body refinement warriors also managed to recompose themselves before springing into action, wielding their weapons as they sliced through one python after another with ease. All of them possessed powerful bodies and astonishing strength, so normal python beasts were completely powerless against them. Meanwhile, Han Li remained completely rooted to the spot on the city wall, but a cold light flashed through his eyes several times in quick succession, following which all of the python's beasts pouncing toward him were sliced into a dozen or so sections. Python blood rained down from above. With his current level of mastery of the Vajra arts combined with his usage of the blinking sword art, he was able to unleash miraculous attacks, even though he was only wielding an ordinary saber in his hand. Not only was he swinging his saber through the air at astonishing speeds, his attacks were completely soundless and imbued with devastating power. Even a low-grade treasure would most likely be sliced in half by one of his saber strikes, let alone these ordinary python beasts. As such, Han Li paid no heed to the Norma crimson pythons that were raining down from above, turning his gaze instead toward the swarm of pythons in the distance. He was rather interested in those 3 snake demons. However, right at this moment, a resounding boom suddenly erupted nearby, followed by a burst of anguished human howls. Letter 1D4BB, letter 1D633, letter 1D626, letter 1D626, letter 1D638, letter 212F, letter 1D624, letter 1D45C, letter 1D62E. And Li faltered slightly upon hearing this, before turning his gaze toward the source of the commotion. Round 100 feet away from him, an astonishingly massive mutated python had managed to force its way onto the city wall. As soon as it landed, it immediately bit off the upper half of a soldier's body with its cavernous mouth, then sent another body refinement warrior flying into the city wall with a powerful whip of its tail. The body refinement warrior's chest had completely caved in as a result, and the only thing that awaited him was death. At this moment, a ferocious green light flashed within the python's eyes as it turned its gaze toward Han Li. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly as he glared coldly at the giant python, before swaggering over to the beast in a nonchalant manner. The python seemed to have sensed that Han Li was quite dangerous, and it arched its body before springing forth like lightning, opening its cavernous mouth again to try and swallow Han Li whole. Han Li's expression remained unchanged as he slowly raised his saber. All of a sudden, his saber disappeared into an untraceable blur as he swung it through the air toward the giant python's head. The oncoming python's body came to an abrupt halt, following which countless geysers of blood erupted from its head as it separated into several pieces. The seemingly nonchalant attacks unleashed by Han Li had completely dismembered the formidable giant python. Han Li glanced down expressionlessly at the python's headless carcass before turning to leave. However, right at this moment, a startling turn of events suddenly ensued. The rear half of the giant python's headless body suddenly twisted before viciously sweeping toward Han Li like lightning. The python was using up all its remaining strength in that single strike, and its body was hurtling through the air like a devastatingly powerful whip, trying to fell Han Li in one fell swoop. All of the soldiers and body refinement warriors nearby all let loose cries of alarm upon seeing this. Right at this moment, a dull thump rang out as Han Li struck the python's tail with a shimmering golden fist, punching a massive hole into its body and sending it flying in the process. However, the front half of the giant python's headless body twisted around at an unimaginable angle and also crashed toward Han Li with fearsome might. Han Li's expression darkened as he raised his saber, and his body swayed as he rushed toward the giant python, leaving a trail of afterimages in his wake. Piercing cold light flashed through the air, following which Han Li appeared behind the python's body before slowly turning around. Blood gushed forth from the giant python's body like crimson rivers before it fell to the ground, having already been sliced into 7 or 8 pieces. The python was well and truly dead now. Only the short span of a few breaths had passed since the giant python pounced toward Han Li to the moment that it was completely dismembered. All of the soldiers and body refinement warriors that were preparing to step in and help were all completely and utterly dumbstruck. At the same time, they were ecstatic to have such a powerful ally on their side. It didn't take a genius to figure out that Han Li was most definitely no ordinary body refinement warrior. With a man of his extraordinary talents on his side, they were going to be a lot safer. Thus, all of them were feeling quite reinvigorated as they continued to slay the ordinary crimson python beast around them. The battle was becoming fiercer and more of those mutated giant pythons were beginning to appear. Han Li didn't know about what was happening elsewhere, but on the stretch of the city wall where he was situated, he had already slain 5 or 6 mutated giant pythons on his own. He had learned his lesson from the first mutated giant python he had slain, and he now made sure to dismember all of them into a dozen or so pieces. That way, there was no chance that they would be able to launch a sneak attack against him. As such, the other body refinement warriors and soldiers could focus solely on combating the normal python beasts, and their jobs were made a lot easier. Unfortunately, the other sections of the city wall didn't have a fearsome warrior like Han Li among their ranks. Mid birds of loud hissing and violent tremors, one mutated giant python after another clambered onto the city wall, destroying large sections of the wall with reckless abandon using their massive powerful tails. Aside from some body refinement warriors who were wielding heavy weapons, no one else could withstand so much as a single strike from these insanely powerful brutes, and the battle became extremely arduous for them. However, the ease with which Han Li was killing giant pythons seemed to have attracted the attention of the swarm of pythons down below. All of a sudden, a series of crimson figures shot into the air, and 3 giant pythons appeared on the city wall at once. As soon as they descended, all of them pounced toward Han Li with unbridled ferocity. Han Li raised his eyebrows slightly in surprise, but a cold smile then surfaced on his face as he hurled his saber toward one of the oncoming pythons. In the face of an ordinary saber like this one, a giant python normally wouldn't even need to take evasive measures, as there was no way that his blade could slice through its armor-like scales. However, Han Li had hurled the saber with astonishingly immense force, making it just as destructive as the most powerful spirit tools. The saber flashed through the air as a streak of cold light, sinking into the python's head before emerging from its tail, slicing the python cleanly in half lengthwise. Han Li's body then swayed, and he suddenly manifested 2 humanoid figures, as if he had used a doppelganger technique, and both of them rushed toward the other 2 giant pythons. A series of dull thumps rang out in rapid succession. Golden light radiated from the humanoid figures in unison, completely inundating the massive bodies of the giant pythons. The 2 humanoid figures then suddenly combined as one again, and the golden light also faded thereafter. The 2 giant pythons were revealed, slumped to the ground, unable to move so much as a single inch. In that split second, Han Li had shattered every single bone within these pythons' bodies into dust, thereby completely immobilizing them. All of the nearby soldiers immediately rushed over to land the killing blows upon seeing this. After losing 3 mutated giant pythons to Han Li at once, the swarm of pythons knew better than to target him again. As such, no more giant pythons appeared on their section of the city wall. Not only did everyone else in that section heave a collective sigh of relief, Han Li was also happy to be left to his own devices. Thus, he slowly strode over to the spot where he had previously been standing before looking up at the battle taking place overhead. At this point, the impasse between the cultivators and the Liacan beasts had finally been broken. All of a sudden, the stream of demonic feathers erupting from the green mist came to an abrupt halt, thereby indicating that those projectiles were not actually in unlimited supply. Human cultivators were ecstatic upon seeing this. However, before they had a chance to attack with their treasures, the expanse of demonic mist up ahead suddenly began to surge violently amid a sharp cry, following which the mist began to manifest into a certain form. In the blink of an eye, it had transformed into a gargantuan Liacan beast with its entire body covered in green feathers and a ferocious expression its leopard head. It spread open its wings before rushing toward the group of human cultivators with devastating might. All of the cultivators were very alarmed to see this. Even with 2 false core cultivators among their ranks, they didn't dare to oppose this enemy head-on as they had no idea how powerful it was. Thus, everyone temporarily dispersed and withdrew their treasures to better protect themselves. However, a startling turn of events then unfolded. After rushing past the group of cultivators, the giant Liacan beast made no effort to attack any of them. Instead, it plummeted rapidly toward the city wall down below like a shooting star. "Damn it, we've been had. Hurry up and stop that thing." The brocade-robed man from the Golden Jade sect flew into a thunderous rage upon seeing this. All of the other cultivators also came to their senses, as they activated their treasures to pursue the giant Liacan beast. However, the gargantuan beast down below completely disregarded the attacks being launched at it, and it was intent on flying toward the city wall at full speed. A short while later, a section of its body had been scattered by the pursuing treasures, but they had also reached close to 100 feet away from the city wall. The gusts of gale-force winds being swept up by its gigantic wings were threatening to throw the normal soldiers direct off the city wall. Han Li looked up at the giant beast up above, and his calm expression finally cracked. It turned out that this massive Liacan beast was descending directly toward the section of the city wall that he was defending. In the face of such a devastating attack, even mid-grade cultivators would be unable to take it head-on, let alone normal body refinement warriors. Even though he had mastered the fourth layer of the Vajra arts, he wasn't fully confident that he would be able to emerge unscathed in the face of this attack. As such, he immediately rustled his sleeve to produce an inky black bead. However, a hesitant look then appeared on his face. The immortal vanquishing beads were the only protective treasures he had for combating powerful enemies, and it would be a waste to use one of them now. Furthermore, by his estimations, he would definitely be able to survive this attack, having mastered the fourth layer of the Vajra arts, and he would only be severely wounded at most. After processing this train of thought in the blink of an eye, a grim look appeared on Han Li's face as he stowed away the bead in his hand again. At the same time, he showed no intention of taking evasive measures in the face of the colossal beast descending from above. Instead, he took a deep breath and clenched his fists, following his entire body took on a shimmering golden hue. He then let loose a loud cry before crouching down slightly, then aiming a devastating punch into the city wall underfoot. Even though this was an extremely powerful strike, it was almost entirely inconsequential in the face of the massive Liacan beast. Before the attack had a chance to unleash its power, Han Li had already been inundated by a sea of green mist. The massive Liacan beast crashed heavily into the city wall. An earth-shattering boom rang out, and even though the city walls had been fortified through a special construction method, there was no way that they could withstand an attack comparable to one from a core formation cultivator. Thus, the city wall was immediately shattered, the entire structure completely crumbled. As for the ordinary soldiers and body refinement warriors on the city wall, they didn't have to worry about this as they had already been crushed into mincemeat by the descending massive Liacan beast. However, even though the giant Liacan beast was dispersed after crashing into the wall, waves of suffocating green mist began to spread in all directions. As soon as a human was swept up in this mist, they would immediately let loose blood-curdling cries before falling to the ground. Before long, they would be transformed into a series of green corpses. As such, all of the human soldiers who had originally intended to provide reinforcements were hurriedly backing away in horror instead. Almost at the exact same moment, a loud cry erupted from within the glacial mist, and large hordes of Liacan beasts poured forth from within, joining all of their Crimson Python beast allies. The Crimson Python beasts seemed to be immune to the effects of the green mist, and they swarmed into the city through the section of the city wall that had just been destroyed. An army of Crimson Pythons flooded into Yuan City, and there were hundreds of mutated giant pythons among them. And Yuan City had been breached just like that. The human cultivators in the air above were horrified to see this, yet that bald false core cultivator was unwilling to give up. He raised his axe treasure high above his head and roared, "Seal up that opening. We can still save this city." "Forget about it. It's already too late, Brother Wang. Even if the city wall hadn't collapsed, and Yuan City was already a lost cause anyway, it was only a matter of time before their defenses were breached." The false core cultivator from the Golden Jade sect suddenly interjected before casting his gaze toward the city with an indifferent look on his face. "What do you mean by that? Huh, what are those things?" The bald man faltered initially upon hearing this, but he quickly caught sight of something, upon which his expression became extremely strained. In the distance behind the swarm of crimson pythons, a vast expanse of yellow mist had appeared. A loud rumbling sound akin to that of countless thundering horse hooves could be heard coming from within the mist. Those are sandbug beasts. They must have come from the azure sifting desert. And Yuan City is being attacked by 4 waves of demon beasts at once. There really is no hope for them, a more experienced and knowledgeable cultivator exclaimed. All of the other cultivators' expression darkened upon hearing this. Even a large city would struggle to cope with such a devastating assault, let alone a small city like in Yuan City. It's impossible to save the entire city, so let's focus on other objectives instead. I have someone that I need to save, so I'll be taking my leave now. The brocade-robed man suddenly cupped his fist in a salute to everyone, then called the young female and male cultivator from the Golden Jade sect to him, before all 3 of them flew toward the city. I didn't think that a 7th city in our heavenly origin region would be conquered so quickly by these beast torrents. There will definitely be people sent from heavenly origin city to ask about what happened here. Once they arrive, just tell them the truth. I'll also be taking my leave. The bald man delivered a few instructions with a wry smile on his face before also departing. However, he was traveling away from the city. All of the other cultivators glanced at one another before also dispersing. Some of them were returning to the city to save their loved ones, while others flew away from the city like the bald man. At this moment, the yellow mist in the distance had also reached in Yuan City, and a series of massive sandbug beasts each around 10 feet in size emerged from within. All of them had pairs of vicious crimson eyes and sets of sinister facial features. In the face of the combined attacks from these four types of demon beasts, and Yuan City was completely razed to the ground. A small proportion of mortals managed to escape under the protection of some body refinement warriors, but most of them ended up in the bellies of the demon beasts. However, the hordes of beasts only wreaked havoc within Yuan City for about 3 to 4 days before departing. The beast torrent had officially come to a conclusion. It wasn't exactly an uncommon occurrence for small cities of this scale to be destroyed by beast torrents, but the high-grade cultivators of heavenly origin cities were still alerted in the end, and a large group of people was deployed to assess the incident. Of course, all of that was only going to happen further down the track. 2 days after the departing of the beast hordes, spiritual light flashed in the distance, and several cultivators descended upon the section of the city where the city wall had been destroyed. The spiritual light receded to reveal 3 cultivators. They were none other than the cultivators from the Golden Jade sect, and the trio was led by the brocade-robed man with the Qin surname. The 3 of them were currently scouring the landscape down below as if they were searching for something. That man is most likely already dead. You saw how powerful the combined attack from the Liacan beasts was, Senior Marshal Brother. Why do you still insist that this man could be alive? The young man from the Golden Jade sect couldn't help but ask. You may be unaware of this, but the Vajra arts is vastly different compared to normal body refinement techniques. After mastering the 3rd layer of the Vajra arts, even a mortal would be able to cleanse their essence and bolster their bodies to such a degree that they would be able to withstand a full-force attack from a low-grade treasure. The attack from the swarm of Liacan beasts was indeed powerful, but it wasn't solely directed toward him, so if he had activated his Vajra arts in advance, there's a good chance that he would have survived. What we're trying to do now requires the assistance of a powerful mortal like him. If it weren't for the fact that I was too far away from him at the time, I would have definitely stepped in to save him. The brocade-robed man shook his head with a grim expression in response. The young male cultivator was still rather skeptical, but he didn't state any further objections. However, the female cultivator among them suddenly broke her silence. Even if that man did survive, this place has been ravaged by those beasts for such a long time. He's most likely been eaten already. How could he possibly still be alive? The brocade-robed man's lips twitched as a wry smile appeared on his face, and he replied, "That's also a possibility. It's just that it's really difficult to find a suitable candidate for the task we're about to undertake, so I don't want to give up any opportunity, no matter how slim the chances are." "Oh, may I ask what you need me to do for you, Immortal Qin?" An indifferent voice suddenly rang out from beneath a pile of rubble down below, followed by a resounding boom as the rubble was forcibly scattered in all directions. After the dust and debris settled, 2 humanoid figures, one tall and one short, was revealed. The 3 cultivators in the sky faltered initially upon seeing this before the brocade-robed man exclaimed with elation, "Han Li." The 2 humanoid figures down below were none other than Han Li and a little girl who appeared to be around 4 or 5 years old. Even though her clothes were rather dirty and ragged, it was still quite apparent that they had been made from luxurious and expensive materials. The little girl was very adorable with porcelain-like skin and a pair of large black eyes. However, those eyes were filled with a hint of horror as she grasped tightly onto Han Li's robes with her little hand and pressed her own body against Han Li's leg. "I'm glad to see you're alive and well, Brother Han. May I ask who that little girl is?" the brocade-robed man asked with a smile before the 3 cultivators descended together. "I don't know who she is, either. On the day that the city was destroyed, she and a few body refinement warriors fled to this place, but were surrounded by a pack of wolf beasts. Everyone else perished to those wolf beasts, but I could bear to see this little girl die, so I saved her on a whim." Han Li looked back at the little girl with a resigned expression. Even though he had taken a direct attack from that massive Liacan beast, he had shattered the city wall below him in advance, thereby allowing him to fall and buffer the impact. As expected, with the defensive properties of the 4th layer of the Vajra arts, he only sustained some minor injuries. However, due to the immense impact of the attack, he unintentionally managed to break through the bottleneck in his Vajra arts. Back when he was in the human world, he was unable to advance any further in the Vajra arts, and this was exactly because of that bottleneck. However, he could sense that he would only have to cultivate for around half a year now, before mastering the fifth layer of the Vajra arts. As such, he decided to hide beneath the rubble and only emerge after the crisis had been averted. As such, he encountered this little girl and was drawn into saving her. However, the events thereafter weren't as simple as he made them out to be. At the time, in order to avoid having the location of his hiding spot revealed, he killed over 100 beasts in the surrounding area, making sure that there were no beasts left in the general vicinity before returning to his hiding spot beneath the rubble with the little girl. The entire process had been a rather arduous one. Furthermore, if it weren't for this little girl weighing him down, he could have already departed from the city a few days ago. He was confident that he would be able to sneak past the hordes of beasts if he were on his own, but the little girl was like a beacon that was sure to draw widespread attention from the hordes of beasts in the city, so he decided to continue waiting beneath the rubble. The aura of mortals was very strong in this city, so it was enough to obscure the aura of the little girl. The commotion in the city had died down a couple of days ago, but Han Li decided to wait for a while longer as a safety precaution. He was just about to emerge from his hiding spot when the three cultivators from the Golden Jade sect arrived on the scene, and he had overheard the entirety of their conversation. As such, he decided to reveal himself, and the three cultivators were given a massive fright during the process. After all, it appeared that Han Li was completely unscathed when all of them had thought that he would at least have been severely wounded, if not dead. The brocade-robed man was naturally ecstatic to see this, yet he was also quite alarmed by Han Li's power. Without even realizing it himself, he had unconsciously adopted a polite tone of voice, clearly regarding Han Li as an equal. "You're a very kind man, Brother Han. Seeing as this little girl had a personal squad of body refinement warriors to protect her, she's most likely not just some ordinary little girl. Have you tried asking about her origins, Brother Han?" The brocade-robed man inspected the little girl with a rather intrigued expression. "She won't tell me anything aside from the fact that her name is Dare." Han Li heaved a resigned sigh. "Haha, she must have been warned by the adults in her family against revealing too much about herself. That's not a problem, though. We just have to find all of the prominent figures that managed to escape from a Yuan city, and someone should be able to identify her. Getting back to you now, Brother Han, you sure are full of surprises. I didn't think that you would be able to survive that beast torrent completely unscathed," the brocade-robed man praised. "I was merely lucky. You appear to be looking for me, Immortal Qin. How may I be of assistance?" Han Li could tell that the brocade-robed man had been trying to dodge this question earlier, and a hint of a smile appeared on his face. "I'll have to tell you about this sooner or later, but this isn't the place to talk, Brother Han. How about I take you to where the rest of the survivors from Yuan City are situated?" the brocade-robed man asked with solemn expression following a brief pause. "Sure, perhaps some of this little girl's loved ones would be among them," Han Li replied. "That would be best. I'll take Brother Han on my treasures. You take this little girl, junior marshal sister," the brocade-robed man instructed. The young female cultivator nodded before making her way over Han Li. She put on a benevolent expression and extended a hand toward Dare. The little girl was very adorable, and the female cultivator had fallen in love with her at first sight. However, the feelings of affection clearly weren't mutual, as a fearful look appeared on Dare's face at the sight of the approaching female cultivator. She abruptly hid herself behind Han Li's back, avoiding the female cultivator like the plague. The female cultivator's expression stiffened, and a slightly awkward look appeared on her face. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this. The brocade-robed man also faltered initially upon seeing this, but a smile quickly appeared on his face as he said, "It's all right, I'll carry both of them on my treasure. Th's little girl must have been through a lot, and it appears that she only trusts Brother Han." Han Li nodded in agreement and grabbed the little girl before setting her on his shoulder. The brocade-robed man brought out a small sword, which swelled drastically to several tens of feet in size before hovering in the air. His body then swayed as he hovered drifted onto the sword. Just as he was about to turn around and extend an invitation toward Han Li, a voice suddenly sounded from behind him. "Does your treasure have a protective feature, fellow Taoist Qin? If so, could I trouble you to activate it? Dare is quite young, and I'm afraid that she won't be able to cope with the strong winds during our flight." The voice had come from directly behind the brocade-robed man, and he hurriedly turned around with a surprised expression, only to find that Han Li was standing on his sword with him. He had somehow managed to board his sword while completely escaping his notice. The brocade-robed man forced a smile onto his face as he said, So you're proficient in aura concealment secret techniques as well, Brother Han. It's just a little trick I learned, Han Li replied indifferently. The brocade-robed man took a final meaningful glance at Han Li before turning around and making a hand seal. Yellow light abruptly shimmered from the flying sword underfoot, manifesting a faint light barrier that shielded all three of them within before the sword flew into the distance as a streak of yellow light. The other two young cultivators also followed closely behind them. It didn't take long before the three streaks of light had disappeared into the distant sky. Half a day later, three streaks of light descended toward a set of undulating hills. On the ground below, there was a vast expanse of tents and wooden huts, as well as other types of makeshift structures set up, extending for a stretch of several kilometers. You're back, Senior Marshal Brother Chin. Oh, and you found Brother Han as well. As soon as the three streaks of light descended in front of a certain wooden cabin, a blue-robed young man rushed over to them with an elated expression. Thankfully, our trip wasn't made in vain. Is the mistress in the cabin? The brocade-robed man asked with a smile. Mother is currently discussing some things with Leader Zhang. Please come in, Senior Marshal Brother Chin. The blue-robed young man extended a salute to the brocade-robed man before nodding to acknowledge Han Li. Han Li had a rather good impression of this young master from the Heavenly East Enterprise, so he also nodded politely in response before setting the little girl on her shoulder back down onto the ground. As soon as her 2 feet landed on the ground, the little girl clung tightly onto Han Li's robes again, as if she were made of glue. Even though Han Li had already anticipated that this would happen, he still heaved a resigned sigh upon seeing this. As such, he had no choice but to take this little girl into the wooden cabin with him. The cabin was a makeshift one, so it wasn't very large in area, only around 70 to 80 feet in size. However, it had been kept very clean and orderly, and there was even a set of intricately crafted sandalwood furniture sitting within the cabin. The beautiful Mistress Fang was sitting in the main seat within the cabin while conversing with Zhang Kui about something. There were also 6 other people standing off to the side, with their hands clasped behind their backs in a respectful manner. There was a pair of gray-robed men, who were none other than the guards that had been taught a lesson by Han Li a while ago, as well as Liur and the 3 other young female servants. You're finally back, Immortal Chin. I was planning to send Leader Zhang out to look for you. You also brought Deputy Leader Han back with you. Looks like I won't have worry about sending out a separate search party for him now. Also, isn't that City Lord Zhao's granddaughter? A surprised expression appeared on Mistress Fang's face as she caught sight of Han Li and the little girl that was clinging to his robes. Everyone else was also quite surprised to see the duo, and the 4 young female servants were naturally quite elated to see that Han Li was safe and well. City Lord Zhao, are you referring to the City Lord of an Yuan City? The brocade-robed man asked. Which other City Lord could I be referring to? Mistress Fang asked with a rather peculiar expression. With the body refinement techniques that City Lord Zhao has cultivated, he's no less powerful than a late Foundation establishment cultivator. Even though the city has been destroyed, he should have managed to survive that ordeal. I'm sure he would be overjoyed to see his beloved granddaughter. Is City Lord Zhao or any members of his family here? The brocade-robed man asked with a contemplative expression. I think a butler and a few servants of the Zhao Manor are living nearby. I'll send someone to look for them right away. Mistress Fang smiled in response before assigning the task to one of the gray-robed guards standing in the cabin. She didn't seem too interested at all in asking about why this little girl was with Han Li. After everyone had taken a seat, Mistress Fang's brows furrowed as she mused. I really am quite surprised that you were able to remain completely unscathed in the face of the beast torrent, Deputy Leader Han. However, I can't help but feel that something is amiss. Why would 4 different hordes of beasts attack a small city like an Yuan City at the same time? That's really hard to say. Perhaps it really was just a coincidence. In any case, that's not something for us to worry about. The seniors from Heavenly Origin City will be investigating this incident, the brocade-robed man replied with a shake of his head. Mistress Fang nodded and said, You're right, Immortal Chin. If an Yuan City had 100 more Foundation establishment cultivators as reinforcements, we would have been able to withstand this beast torrent. It would have been impossible to recruit the assistance of so many cultivators. Even though there are countless cultivators in our 3 regions, virtually none of them would be willing to assist a city full of mortals. They would be taking a big risk and stand to gain nothing from it, so there really is no incentive for them to step in. In fact, aside from the several large cities directly controlled by cultivators, No other city has the right to set up any cultivator markets. This is the reason why beast torrents are never a problem for those large cities. Millions of low-grade cultivators are present in those cities at any given time during the day, so no beasts would dare to attack them, the brocade-robed man replied in an indifferent manner. Millions. Hanli knew that there was a staggering number of cultivators in the spirit realm, but he was still stunned to hear that just a single city could be inhabited by so many cultivators. Indeed, the heavenly origin region is extremely vast, and mortal cities only account for a tiny area within the region, so it's only natural that immortals wouldn't pay any heed to them. Mistress Fang heaved a forlorn sigh. In response to the slightly accusatory tone in Mistress Fang's words, the brocade-robed cultivator could only give a wry smile. Everyone was aware of the conflict between mortals and cultivators, and the subject wasn't something a mere foundation establishment cultivator like him could comment on. Right at this moment, someone delivered a report from outside the wooden cabin. Mistress Fang, City Lord Zhao's butler, is here. Would you like me to take him inside? Of course, please invite him into the cabin, Mistress Fang immediately replied. Yes, the door was opened from the outside, and 3 people strode in. One of them was the gray-robed guard, while the other 2 consisted of a slender young woman and an elderly man with a head of snowy white hair. As soon as these 2 entered the room, the expression on Dare's little face changed drastically. It really is the young mistress. This is great. Are you all right, young Mistress Dare? The young woman immediately rushed over to Dare and crouched down beside her as tears welled up in her eyes. The little girl also let go of Han Li's robes for the first time, as she threw her little arms around the young woman and burst into sobs. Thank you for recovering our young mistress, Mistress Fang. Master would have my head on a plate if the young mistress had gone missing. The elderly man was also very elated, and he hurriedly extended a grateful bow to Mistress Fang. I was not the one who rescued her. It was Deputy Leader Han who saved young Mistress Zhao's life, Mistress Fang conceded truthfully. You have my eternal gratitude, young Master Han. I'll be sure to report this matter to my master so he can issue you a handsome reward for your efforts. There's no need to thank me. I only bumped into your young mistress by chance. You can take her away now. Han Li waved a hand in response. The elderly man extended some further words of gratitude before taking his leave along with Dare and that young woman, who appeared to be a servant. Dare wasn't clinging onto Han Li's robes anymore, but she was still looking at Han Li with a forlorn expression in her large eyes as she led out of the room by the young female servant. The little girl was like an adorable little puppy, and Han Li was suddenly struck by a childish impulse as he put on a theatrical grimace for her. The little girl immediately burst into laughter at the sight of Han Li's comical expression, and she finally departed from the cabin with a sweet smile on her face. The brocade-robed man had been keeping an eye on Han Li this entire time, and he suddenly said, "Looks like you've grown quite fond of that little girl, Brother Han. Even if City Lord Zhao managed to escape with his life from that beast torrent, the entire city was destroyed, and most of its population was slain by those beasts. Regardless of what excuses he has to offer, he's still going to be held accountable for this incident. It looks like the Zhao family is in a rather precarious situation." What does that have to do with me? I'll let the Zhao family worry about themselves. Han Li cast an indifferent glance toward the brocade-robed man in response. Looks like I was overthinking the issue. Mistress Fang, seeing as Brother Han is back now, shouldn't we be discussing that matter with him? The brocade-robed man chuckled before suddenly turning to Mistress Fang. Mistress Fang faltered initially upon hearing this before quickly returning to her senses. She adopted a rather respectful expression and said, "Of course. We'll be requiring young Master Han's assistance in this matter, so of course it's necessary to discuss things beforehand. I'll have to trouble you to lend Immortal Qin a hand on this occasion, young Master Han. I'm happy to hear what you have to say. As long as the task is within the realm of my abilities, I can certainly consider lending my assistance to Immortal Qin," Han Li replied as he stroked his chin. Mistress Fang took a brief moment to organize her thoughts before continuing. Here's the gist of the matter. My subordinates and I unintentionally discovered something that can increase a cultivator's chances of reaching the core formation stage. Han Li listened expressionlessly, and no one could tell what he was thinking. Meanwhile, in a forest that was several thousand kilometers away, a ball of purple light was rapidly flying through the air. Behind him were 2 flying beasts, one large and one small. The larger one was astonishingly massive, while the smaller one was shimmering with blue light. They were none other than the two leaders of the beast hordes that had appeared at Yuan City a few days ago. Up ahead, a humanoid figure was flashing through the air amid the ball of purple light, and it appeared that it was a man flying atop a treasure. All of a sudden, the purple light up ahead trembled, and the light faded to reveal a purple-robed man. The rectangular object beneath his feet was rapidly plummeting downward, and it appeared that he had lost control over his flight instrument. The two flying beasts behind him were naturally ecstatic to see this, and they caught up to him following just a few flashes. One of them flapped its wings as countless streaks of yellow light shot forth, converging toward the purple-robed man like a torrential storm of light. Meanwhile, the smaller of the two beasts opened its mouth, and a loud thunderclap immediately rang out as a piercing arc of blue light erupted from within. An urgent look appeared on the purple-robed man upon seeing this, and he let loose an almighty cry as he abruptly stomped both feet down onto his dysfunctional flying instrument. Thus, the speed of his descent was increased by severalfold as plummeted from the sky like a shooting star, thereby allowing him to just barely evade the oncoming attacks before disappearing without a trace into the forest down below. The two flying beasts weren't in a hurry to give chase upon seeing this. Instead, they began to circle around in the air above the forest while emitting a series of strange cries. Moments later, a streak of red light hurtled over from the distance, reaching the two flying beasts in the blink of an eye. The light then receded to reveal a young woman in palatial robes who appeared to be just over 20 years of age. Her brows were slightly furrowed, and there was a malicious look in her eyes. As he finally exhausted his supply of spirit stones, "You two really are useless. How has it taken you two so long to pursue a mere body refinement warrior? If it's not for the fact that I have to restrict my magic power fluctuations, I'd have captured him myself long ago." The young woman looked at the forest down below with a cold expression before turning her gaze toward the two flying beasts in a displeased manner. The two intimidating Leacan beasts were all horrified by the displeasure in the young woman's eyes, and both of them began to tremor uncontrollably. "HMPH, I can't allow the bloodline of our race to fall into the hands of the human race. No matter what price I have to pay, I must take that little girl back with me. Once I capture that city Lord Zhao, I'll be able to interrogate him for her whereabouts." The young woman looked down once again, but she showed no intention of taking action. Instead, a rather peculiar expression appeared on her face. Right at this moment, a resounding boom erupted from within the forest nearby, followed by a string of ferocious cries. It sounded as if a fierce battle had broken out in that section of the forest. The young woman and the two Leacan beasts hovered silently in the air, seemingly waiting for something. After a short while, the commotion in the forest came to an abrupt halt, following which 3 balls of black chi and a ball of yellow chi rose up into the air and flew directly toward them. They were none other than the 3 snake demons that had led the army of crimson python beasts a few days ago, as well as a massive sandbug beast that was around 40 to 50 feet in size. The snake demon with the head of a human was currently holding a half-dead human in its hands. It was none other than the purple-robed man who had just plummeted from the sky not long ago. His entire body was stained with blood, and one of his arms had also gone missing, rendering him completely powerless to resist. The 4 demon beasts made their way over to the young woman, before placing respectfully the man before her on a cloud of demonic chi and backing away thereafter. "Well done, I'll be sure to reward you handsomely for this." The young woman nodded with a content look after verifying that the purple-robed man was still alive. The snake demons and the massive sandbug beast all let loose low cries in unison, seemingly overjoyed by the prospect of the reward they had been promised. The purple-robed man had regained his consciousness at this point, and he was stunned to see the young woman standing in midair before him. "Impossible! You're an 8th-grade metamorphosis stage demon beast. How did you manage to enter our heavenly origin region?" "8th-grade demon beast? I guess you can say that. However, I'm the one asking questions here, not you. Listen up, I want to know the whereabouts of a certain person. If you tell me where they are, I'll grant you a quick and painless death. Otherwise, I'll pull your soul out of your body and find the answer I seek using a soul search technique. I don't need to tell you how painful the latter option will be for you, right?" The young woman held herself in a graceful and refined manner, but her words were extremely cold and cruel. The purple-robed man's grim expression darkened even further. "You're clearly a prominent figure among the demon race, yet you're interrogating a mere body refinement warrior like me. What information could I possibly offer that would be of interest to you? Perhaps there's been some kind of misunderstanding, and I'm not the person you're looking for, senior." A cold light flashed through the young woman's eyes upon hearing this. She raised a slim finger, and a thin beam of red light shot forth, puncturing the purple-robed man's shoulder in a flash. The man let loose a howl of agony, and the smell of burned flesh wafted through the air as a small hole appeared on his shoulder. "Didn't I say that I was the one who was going to be asking questions? If you make the same mistake again, I'm going to chop off all of your limbs," the young woman threatened expressionlessly. Only after a long which did the purple-robed man manage to recover from the excruciating agony shooting through his shoulder, and he said through gritted teeth, "I understand, Senior. Please tell me what you'd like to know." The young woman looked at the purple-robed man with a cold expression and said, "It's quite simple. I want to know the whereabouts of a little girl named Dare. Don't tell me you don't know her. She's your only granddaughter." "Dare, you're from the Black Phoenix race," the purple-robed man exclaimed. "Correct. Looks like you knew all along that Dare had the bloodline of our Black Phoenix race. If it weren't for the fact that you're constantly hiding in your city with your granddaughter like a cowardly turtle, I wouldn't have had to go to the trouble of deploying such a massive beast torrent to attack your Yuan city. The entire city's been destroyed, but I still haven't found your granddaughter, so I can only come to you for answers," the young woman revealed with a cold smile. "I knew it. There was no way we could have kept the Black Phoenix Demon King in the dark," the purple-robed man murmured as the final trace of hope faded from his eyes. "It's good that you know your place. But then again, you humans sure are brave. Not only did you send someone to seduce the young master of our Black Phoenix race, you even dared to sneak the bloodline of our holy race back to your human race. Do you really that the Black Phoenix race won't be able to do anything just because you fled back to the 3 regions of the human race?" The expression on the young woman's face gradually cooled even further as she spoke. "My daughter has already passed away because of Dare. What more do you want?" The purple-robed man also cast aside all inhibitions as he gritted his teeth with an expression of resentment and fury. "What do we want? We want to take Dare back to our Black Phoenix Palace, of course. Even though she's half human, she still has the bloodline of our holy race running through her veins, so she can't be allowed to remain with you humans. I'm glad that your daughter already died. It saves me from having to hunt her down myself. Now tell me where that little girl is." The young woman seemed to be losing her patience. The purple-robed man glowered at her for a long while before spitting through gritted teeth, "I don't know." The young woman's expression remained completely unchanged, and it seemed that she was not surprised in the slightest by the man's answer. However, her body then swayed as she flashed through the air toward the purple-robed man, then grasped her 5 slim fingers over the top of his head. "Take one final look at this world. You'll cease to exist in a moment," the young woman said in a cold voice before blue light flashed from her fingertips. The purple-robed man's eyes rolled into the back of his head as he entered a state of complete sensory deprivation. After a while, a dried corpse that had been reduced to only several feet in size plummeted from the sky and disappeared into the forest down below. "Things are a little more troublesome than I expected. I didn't think that man would be so stubborn and patriotic. He gave orders to his subordinates to execute his granddaughter if they don't meet up after 10 days. Who would have thought that he could be so cruel? Looks like rather sacrifice his only granddaughter for the sake of the human race than see another high-grade demon beast rise up among our Black Phoenix race. Thankfully, he's just a body refinement warrior. If he were a cultivator instead, perhaps he would have developed into quite a formidable figure. So this means that he wasn't actually with his granddaughter on the day that in Yuan City was destroyed. Are you sure none of you saw the person I'm looking for on that day?" The young woman suddenly turned to the demon beasts beside her with a cold and interrogatory gaze. The demon beasts glanced at one another before letting loose a string of strange cries in an extremely respectful manner. The young woman's brows furrowed upon seeing this. All of a sudden, she flipped a hand over and a crimson bead appeared over her palm. She then made a hand seal and chanted something before opening her mouth, upon which a small ball of blood essence was expelled onto the bead as a layer of blood mist. A burst of crimson light immediately appeared over the surface of the red bead. The young woman stared at the bead with an intense, unblinking gaze. Only after a long while did she close her eyes with an exhausted expression on her face, but she quickly opened her eyes again. "The person I'm looking for isn't dead, and she hasn't left this area. I don't care what methods you employ, but you have to find her for me within 3 days. If you can't do that, then there's no reason for you to continue to exist in this world. However, I am a fair individual who hands down punishments and rewards in equal measure. You've captured the Lord of a Yuan city, so you'll naturally be rewarded for your efforts. You can take these pills and consume them now. They'll save you several centuries of arduous cultivation. If you can find the little girl, I'll have an even better reward waiting for you." The young woman flicked a finger, and several white pills shot forth, flying toward the group of demon beasts. The demon beasts hurriedly opened their mouths with overjoyed expressions before swallowing the pills and letting loose a series of elated cries. After that, they transformed into balls of demonic chi and sped away into the distance. How annoying! If it weren't for the fact that using my spiritual sense and magic power could attract the attention of high-grade human cultivators, I wouldn't have to ask those idiots to do my bidding. I can't stay here anymore. I have to go back as quickly as possible after taking care of this matter. The young woman heaved a faint sigh before raising a hand. Red light flashed, and a handkerchief-like treasure enshrouded her entire body before she disappeared on the spot as a plume of azure smoke. Not long after she vanished, one of the seemingly ordinary trees in the forest down below suddenly warped and transformed into a black-robed elderly man with a set of sinister facial features. The man was holding a dried corpse in his hands, and it was none other than the corpse of the purple-robed man. I didn't think I'd see the demonic maiden of the Black Phoenix race here. Looks like her cultivation base is far superior to mine, and I most likely wouldn't have been able to escape her notice if it weren't for the fact that she's really wary about releasing her spiritual sense. Who would have thought that someone with the bloodline of the Black Phoenix race would be dwelling in a Yuan city? Haha, this is a brilliant opportunity for me. This body will be quite useful for me. The elderly man chuckled before tossing the dried corpse into the air. He then rubbed his hands together before raising them over his head. A burst of gray mist suddenly obscured the entire dried corpse, following which an incredible scene unfolded. The dried and shriveled corpse suddenly began to expand like a rehydrating sponge, rapidly reverting back to its original form. Even the dismembered arm had grown back once again. Hee, with this body, I'll be able to find that little girl first, and then. And then what? Just as the black-robed man was chuckling to himself, an icy cold voice suddenly sounded from behind him. His expression immediately changed drastically, following which he immediately shot forth into the distance as a streak of gray light like a rabbit that had just had its tail trodden on. In his haste to escape, he had even abandoned the dried corpse that he had just rejuvenated.